Okay, Joel Gertner is on the line. So let's get Joel up. Joel, how you doing today?
Good, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing really good. So one question I've always been meaning to ask you, okay, and that is, what do your parents and your family think about leaving Cornell for ECW?
They hate it. They absolutely, they can't, I don't think they can understand it, and they hate it, you know. But I guess they just don't get it, you know, because at Cornell, which, I mean, I went there because, I mean, I applied to all 8 Ivy League schools, right, and 8 other ones, too. And most of the essays were about wrestling. So, of course, I wasn't, anywhere that was about wrestling, I wasn't getting in. Now, Cornell, their application didn't allow me to write my essay about wrestling. I had to write it about something else. I got in. It was the only 8 of the Ivies that was the case for. So when I see that I get in there, I say, okay, I got in there. I got into NYU, Boston University, and they all had good TV radio kind of programs. Cornell didn't. Cornell was like, a lot of people took communications there where it was just something to take, something to fill their schedule. They really didn't want to even be involved. And the communications curriculum at Cornell was really, it was theoretical. It wasn't applied. It wasn't like get into the TV studio, learn how to edit, learn how to produce, learn how to be on air. And, of course, I didn't care. I just went to Cornell because I got in, and I didn't know what I was going to be doing, and it was the, I guess, most prestigious school out of the ones that I got into. Sure enough, no TV radio curriculum there. I would have been better at Ithaca College, which was 3 miles away. They had, like, the number 3 or number 2 TV and radio curriculum in the country. But anyway, as far as Cornell goes, I mean, you know, I don't think my parents understand at all. But I'm better off because had I stayed at Cornell, finished through, and finished up, I was taking TV radio at Ithaca College, and I finished doing that. You know, if I were working at a radio station in, Kansas, let's say Wichita, Kansas, for example, you know, I'd be making so much less than I am now. I wouldn't have the same kind of exposure, and I wouldn't enjoy my job as much. So for me, you know, it's a dream come true, but for them...
They never let you get away with saying what you're allowed to say either.
No, of course not, you know.
How'd they ban you from writing about wrestling?
What's that?
What was in the deal that wouldn't let you write about wrestling? How was it stated?
Oh, Cornell's essay was just pick somebody in your life that, you know what, I did 16 of them in like a 10-day period, so I can't remember which was theirs. But Cornell's was something like pick somebody in your life that's made a difference and talk about why. Or
and they can't be a wrestler.
Like, you know, what is the meaning of the word respect? And I mean, they're also
Bret Hart. No.
You know, there's one. I think it's UPenn, and at the time, their essay was, okay, we're holding your autobiography in our hands. Give us page 146. And I'm thinking, well, if you're holding it in your hands, why do I need to tell you what's on page 146? I didn't write that, but
they didn't want to read the whole thing. Too long.
So. Yeah, but, you know, Cornell was an experience, just like anything else. And while I was there, I was sports director of a radio station. The stuff that I did off campus was really what helped me the most as far as where I am now, because in the classroom at Cornell, I was just, you know, like astrology or, you know, geology. None of that meant anything to me. The things that I took psychology, and that wound up actually, you know, working to my advantage because it was a good thing to take. Communications, but like I say, I did most of that at Ithaca College. But I did like for 7 or 8 of Cornell's teams, and they are Ivy League, so, you know, they're terrible, but they are Division I. I did their public address for their wrestling team, which is like, you know, ranked top 20 some years it isn't. And I was a sports director at the radio station in town, which wasn't actually linked to the college. It was actually an NBC News radio affiliate. And that really gave me a lot of exposure and experience and just hands-on know-how and some connections and contacts, too, because that same station, Keith Olbermann, was the sports director like 15 years earlier. So, you know, that was cool.
And Brian, you got to head out, right?
Yeah, I got to go.
Okay, thanks a bunch, Brian. We'll be talking to you tomorrow. Joel, I know you've been basically a wrestling fan for life, right?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, what I guess would be your earliest wrestling memories?
Oh, man. When I was I think I started watching around when I was 8, and that would be like late 83, at 83, somewhere around there. And around the time that I want to say Atlas and Johnson were WWF Tag Champs, we didn't get much but WWF up here at that time. I'm from Brooklyn, New York originally, and, big Titan stronghold, and, the Garden was the big thing. So Atlas and Johnson were the tag champs, and I think Backlund was still at the end of his reign as WWF champion, and I always liked the heels. I never could get into Backlund, really. He was great, but I never could get into his gimmick. He wasn't a favorite of mine. Same thing with Hogan. That's nothing against Hogan. That's just that I didn't like baby faces, ever. Jake Roberts was my favorite wrestler. I thought he was tremendous. I thought he was just great because I liked the promos. That's really what sucked me in, I was really interested in the interviews and that kind of stuff. And the wrestling just, it was good too, but I really liked the promos.
Now, what was your first connection with ECW, and how did it wind up where it is right now?
I started working, and when I say working, I guess to work you have to get paid, right? So I don't know if what I did for the first couple of years was working, but I went to a gym called the Lower East Side Wrestling Gym when I was 16. And I met people there just by, volunteering to referee, ring announce, manage, and I used the atmosphere there to train myself how to do all those things. And I met people there like Jason, the sexiest man on earth, and Canyon, Little Guido. Met a bunch of people and just worked the independent circuit for a while. And, when you're 16, 17, 18 trying to get bookings, you work for free. That's just how it is. Finally, I'm like 20 years old, and I just go up to Paul. I see him, and I tap him on the shoulder, and I say, listen, my name's Joel Gertner. I go to Cornell University. You guys are doing a show in Middletown, New York. I said, I know that all of your timekeepers and ring announcers are from the Philadelphia area. I'm only a couple hours from Middletown, and I would love to get a tryout. Is that possible? And he just looked at me, and he said, you want it? And I said, yeah. And he said, you got it. Be there by 6. And that was the beginning, So I'm leery of telling that story because I tell that story to people sometimes when they ask me how I got started with Paul, and they say, oh, maybe I should go tap him on the shoulder and ask him for a job too. And these are, people who aren't in the business yet, or people who've been in for 2 months, so I kind of tell them, it's not that I recommend doing it that way, but after I had been around the business for about 4 years, that's just what I did. I just gave him a verbal resume and, told him I was willing to help out, and that was it.
He told me, and this would have been, I don't know if it's right around this time you're talking about or very shortly thereafter, and it was way before you were ever, any kind of a prominent television personality, and in fact, it was probably right about the time he was about to start you as one. He just goes, he reminds me of me at the same age.
Yeah.
So I think that something must have connected. And, because Paul obviously was a fan from childhood and, the same thing. You know what I mean? I'm sure he did plenty of things for free for a long time before he ended up running his own company. So. Yeah,
I'm sure there are a lot of parallels that can be drawn between Paul and myself, and he's told me that on occasion, that he sees a lot of himself in me, and, that's great. Who better to pattern myself after? Paul's somebody that I admired and enjoyed watching, when he was in WCW, and I was, just trying to get bookings and get into the business. So, I find that very flattering.
Did he work with you on your delivery, or was that something that you just came up with through, just naturally?
Yeah, it's always, everything's a work in progress. Even still, Paul worked with me all along, and even now that I'm trying to make the transition to being a commentator, because it's so much different than being a manager, and it changes your character, and a lot of it's hard to explain if you haven't done either or. But yeah, Paul worked with me in the beginning. A lot of it was natural, my own instinct, what I thought a heel should be, what I thought somebody who looked and sounded like me should be as a heel to get the right kind of heat. And that went through various stages. I mean, at first, I was a true heel. I had heat with the people because they hated me. And it was a kind of hate where here I was, this kid, this, white bread looking kid who looks like, if he stepped outside the ECW arena after the show, he'd get mugged. And, he's coming from New York, and he's taking Bob Ortiz, was the long-time, Philadelphia ring announcer, and I was, I guess, taking his spot is the way it was looked at, and people hated me just because they hated me. And then that became, I started getting a different kind of heat where, people, they liked to hate me. It's gone through so many stages now as I've gone from, a fill-in ring announcer to a regular ring announcer, foreign language ring announcer, and all the different things that I've done. But, yeah, Paul has definitely been there every step of the way as a great influence, and he's definitely helped me. But, yeah, a lot of it is natural.
Has there ever been a bump or a chair shot or something like that where it was like you were going like, I hope I never take another one like that one again?
Bumps are, interesting for me because I tried to train as a wrestler at the Lower East Side Wrestling Gym, and I just, after the first day, I just said, this isn't for me. Not necessarily because I thought if I didn't apply even if I applied myself, I'd fail. Not because of that, but more because I didn't enjoy it as much. And I knew that meant I wouldn't be as successful because I tend to have success at things that I enjoy doing. That's just what motivates me. So, I realized that even though I had paid the money and set my sights the day earlier, the week earlier on, really learning how to wrestle that time out and taking it from there, I just realized that I enjoyed doing what I was doing before I paid the money to train to wrestle, just being there, managing, refereeing, ring announcing, learning. That's just what came natural.
Let's head to some phone calls. We've got a full bank of calls. We're going to start with Brent in Seattle. You're first up with Joel Gertner.
Yes. Hi, Dave. Hey, Joel.
Yep.
I don't know whether you're free to comment on this, but what type of effect do you think it would have on ECW to move to USA Network? What effect on would a live television show have? And personally, what about your style, and how do you think that would go over on a live television show and potentially on USA?
Okay, I couldn't hear that all that great, but that was about if ECW were to get on the USA Network because of all of the things that are going on right now?
Right, and maybe theoretically if you were doing live TV every week.
Live TV is something that I think I'm almost ready to handle as it is, if not ready to handle. I tend to overanalyze things a lot and say a lot of things that make sense, but maybe they're not the best way of saying them, and they get produced out, and it just gets replaced. And the way the show is right now, our TNN show, I think it's great. I think it's really smooth. As for live TV, I don't know. I mean, is the company ready? I think so. Certainly. I mean, the pay-per-views have gotten so much better and are still improving as far as production, sound, lighting, things like that. But as far as the scope of the business and if we were on USA, I think it's too early to speculate. USA has had the WWF for many years, and in various incarnations. What they have going now is working out great for them. But, when they had primetime wrestling, at times it wasn't working out. And even before the WWF, I think they had, Joe Blanchard's promotion out of San Antonio?
Southwest Championship Wrestling was the first one, yeah.
So they've had wrestling, WWF and otherwise, for about 20 years. If we were to go on and be a new promotion for them, it all depends on how much money and what kind of strategy they would utilize towards promoting us and marketing us, advertising. It just all depends. But, I mean, that's something that, I shouldn't even speculate on because that's, it's a hypothetical, but it would certainly be interesting.
What about your style, a lot of people would say it's fairly vulgar, and with a larger exposure, do you think you would have to tone any of that down, and do you think you could be as over without it?
I would say that I'm probably no more vulgar than Mae Young being impregnated by Mark Henry, and then giving birth to a Caucasian hand. I don't think I'm more vulgar than that, or a lot of things that are. I don't find the WWF very offensive, but I'm very hard to offend. And I don't find the things that I do offensive. People watch wrestling for whatever reasons they watch wrestling, whether they'll admit those reasons to themselves or not. And I think if you don't like it, change the channel.
No, I'm not saying that I don't like it. I'm saying that that there is a segment of the population that might not be happy, and the top executives, that they don't want to get bad publicity from Bozo or whatever.
Right.
Anyway, thank you very much. And y'all continue to watch ECW, and let's go Zags. Bye.
Okay, Brent. It is one thing. Like your kind of like opening thing that's kind of become your trademark. On the show you're on, it works because everyone expects it. If just let's say theoretically in September you show up, the first time you do it in front of a different audience, there's gonna be some, you know what I mean? There's gonna be some reaction from people at the beginning. And once it becomes established, I don't think there will be a lot. But at the beginning, there may be some. One thing, there have been instances where they've edited that thing out on TNN, and even have they ever even made you like redo that? Your open.
No, I mean, the opens are done, and if they're done in the ring and they edit them out, then obviously that can't be redone because we can't go find a ring somewhere and 3,000 people and start it over. And if they're done in the studio, the bottom line is, I mean, I don't feel that it's necessary for me to change my content at all. If they want to edit me, so be it. They edited out Doggy Style last week, and I've said things that are on that level before, talking about Dawn Marie and her moist, pouty lips and their vertical smile. Yeah, and I think it's just that the people at TNN, they don't get the vertical smile remark, but they can understand Doggy Style. So I think it's their IQ that comes into play and not necessarily my content. But, I mean, who knows? I think I get right now, give or take 5 or 10%, depending on the mood of whoever's finger is censoring this stuff. I think I'm getting just about as much rope, as much of a leash as Val Venus gets on WWF product doing his nicknames and his sexual innuendo. So, I mean, I honestly don't think that anything I do or anything we do on another network would really, phase people, because the WWF has definitely done everything they could do to push the envelope as well.
Plus or minus, when you guys started pushing the envelope, you were going into a stratosphere that nobody else would touch. Then all of a sudden, when WWF made their big switch, they pushed as far as you guys did. It had two advantages it had an advantage and disadvantage for your company. The advantage is you could get away with a lot more because once anything WWF did first or sort of did, you could probably go without shocking people. But the other one is that they were doing that same thing on a national basis, so your uniqueness in doing that wasn't as much.
Yeah, like you say, Dave, pros and cons. I mean, WWF doing some of the things that we did first, but them doing it on more of a national basis with more exposure, certainly, like you said, and it's just obvious, works for and against us depending on in what aspect you're talking about. I mean, WWF pushing the envelope and doing things on pay-per-view. Before we got on pay-per-view, we were told, oh, you're too extreme for pay-per-view. The stuff you do, you can't do that. Then when the WWF does it, it's like, okay, we can't do it, but they can do it. Obviously, we're being discriminated against, So once the envelope is pushed, like you say, it raises the bar and it sets a new standard, and then the things that we were doing all of a sudden are acceptable for pay-per-view. And quite frankly, from some of the stuff that's on pay-per-view, I don't see why a lot of it wasn't in the first place. But now that it was, it was. But then, like you said, the disadvantage, and that's that, a lot of the things that people, let's say tomorrow is the first time somebody turns on TNN and watches us. They could see us do anything that we do, but because they've already watched the WWF for 1 year, 3 years, 10 years, they're going to say, oh, well, they're going to make natural comparisons, and they're going to say, look, what they're doing is just like what the WWF's doing. It's not really the case, but it's just something that happens.
Are you familiar with the stuff that was in the New York Star Ledger over the last week? There was a couple of articles in the editorial, by any chance?
No.
Okay, I think it was in Tuesday's paper. Well, it actually started. There was a promotion, Jersey All Pro, where a reporter went and they ended up doing a front page story on the show. And it was the basis of the story was largely that there were young kids at this show that was doing cheese graters and the whole bit.
Right. Okay.
And then so they put it on the front page of the paper. Then 2 days later, and wrestling was deregulated in New Jersey a couple of years back, so they could do the SummerSlam. So for the '97 SummerSlam show.
Right.
So then the governors had a spokesperson going like, oh, my God, when we deregulated wrestling, this isn't what we expected to happen. You know what I mean? We just expected to have, the fun WWF wrestling. So then the newspaper and them, the governor was talking about, or governor spokesperson was talking about legislation to do something as it involves what they called extreme wrestling. And then the newspaper had a thing about that they should work on banning extreme wrestling or ultimate fighting, which of course is a totally different genre anyway. But of course we don't mean to go after the popular wrestling, that's on cable TV. And I was just thinking like, I don't know what they think that they mean, but the extreme wrestling invariably comes right back to your company, because that's the name, and then not WWF. And yet, if you look at basically if there's things that people are going to find offensive, it's either in both companies, or if you don't find it offensive, it's not offensive in both companies, but it's largely the same thing.
Right. I mean, like I said, I agree wholeheartedly. I don't think if we were to show up on Monday on, the USA Network and have our product that we had the previous Friday on TNN, I don't think it's really going to, set off that many alarms or get that many people saying, oh, my God, this is terrible. Let's, I'm calling the cable company. I don't want cable anymore. Or, oh, my God, I'm going to write my governor. And, if you're familiar with with what the WWF has out there right now on USA, and then you see ECW in its current state, I don't know. I don't think there's that much of a difference insofar as, being offensive. But, like I say, I don't know. It's tough for me to judge because I'm not offended by the WWF product. It's pro wrestling. It's what pro wrestling has always been. I've watched it since I was 8. And I've grown up watching it, and it's always been like this to an extent, and it always will be, and it's cyclical, and it's just that, people seem to get sick of it, and then it got cartoonish, and people liked it until they got sick of how cartoonish it was becoming, and then it became more real life. People liked it again. It's just a cycle, and it's going through the natural progression of the business. I can see that, I guess, because I've been following it for so long, and a lot of people who haven't maybe don't understand, but, that's just the way the business is. And
let's start with
let me
James.
Ask Dave, sure, do you think I'd be able to make a wager with Ben Eckstein? Do you think he would take my bet on whether the buy rate at the next WCW pay-per-view is going to be under a .1?
Under a .1?
Yeah, I'll take that bet.
Wow. Well, I never would have thought that it was going to be under a .2 ever.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting.
I've never seen a period in wrestling. I've seen, we've all seen companies go up and down, but I don't know that I've ever seen a period where the public was so totally rejecting a product that they were still watching and paying attention to as far as buying. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There were like things where people just didn't watch it and, didn't do business. But I don't know that I ever saw one where like even though the TV ratings are down, a lot of people are watching WCW on Mondays and Wednesdays, and some people on Saturdays. If we did a thing, someone actually asked me this question, and I didn't do the math for it, but if you figure your show on TNN is probably doing probably 800,000-900,000 homes a week, and you're probably doing maybe 1 out of every 11 is buying the pay-per-view. WCW, if you look at the number of homes they're doing a week between the shows, you're talking about 6 million homes. And what would that be? 1 out of 150 is buying the pay-per-view instead of 1 out of 11?
Right.
That says something about what the audience that's watching the product actually thinks about spending money on the product.
Oh, I mean, watching it on TV when you're getting it for free, and when you would be watching TV anyway, it's just, what do you choose to watch in comparison to other things is totally separate from what you're willing to get in your car, put gas in your car, drive 45 minutes to go see, and then buy a T-shirt for. It's totally different. When it's free on television, it's moving wallpaper, But when you're actually paying money to go to the show, or you're paying money to get a show on pay-per-view, it shows a much higher level of support from a fan to a promotion. And what I find just unreal, and I'm so pleased, obviously, is the fact that, we were in Chicago for the Anarchy Rules pay-per-view last year, right? And
yeah,
I would
they were a really hot show.
I would venture to say that with 5,000 plus people in the building, and let's say at $5 a head merchandise, let's just say that.
I think you did more.
We probably, in doing that, and I'm talking about our merch, not our gate, we probably, with our merch, beat the net for WCW on pay-per-view this last time around in the Chicago market.
Probably.
That's insane, and it's telltale. And it should be setting off signs over that. They have a lot of great talent in WCW. They really do. And they have the money, they have all the tools that it takes to have a great promotion. It's there. And I'm not doubting that people there are working hard. They can do what it takes to make things better, but they're not.
One of the things Paul has, obviously, is an ability to make wrestlers of medium size or less into players which the other companies are either unwilling or unable to do. One of the, just as an example, we'll go with Jerry Lynn. Jerry Lynn's a very talented wrestler, and when he was in WCW, he was probably, out of all the cruiserweights they had, he was in the bottom 10% as far as where they placed him, with all the different ones that they had. And even when it came to ability, he was no better than a lot of other ones there, yet today he's probably a bigger star than every single one of them, and it's because he's been in a place where there was no one whispering down people's necks saying, he doesn't have this, and he doesn't have that, and he doesn't have this, and he doesn't have that, and therefore he can't ever get out of the opening match.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? In WCW, and it's in WWF as well. And I'm sure it happens in ECW because it's natural wrestling, but it doesn't happen as bad, is where you have these people going like, this is why this person can't get over. And, I could do that about every guy, probably except for The Rock, in this business, and give you a good reason why they shouldn't get over. But if they're over, all my reasons don't mean a thing, Yeah.
The size of a certain wrestler doesn't matter in ECW. And I think it's what Paul is able to do is in some of the other wrestling organizations, especially WWF in different years, depending on who they're pushing at the top, just the way wrestling is, and we can be this way. I mean, this is just the nature of the beast, but the way wrestling is or has been, what they think gets over and what they want to put effort into getting over is the unreal. This guy is unreal. This situation is unreal. You can't imagine it. You'll never see it in the street. It's unreal. What Paul's done done with ECW that I've noticed totally makes me interested in the storylines, and I'm sure it's like this for all the fans, is that rather than it being unreal, Paul makes it real. And when it's real, it doesn't matter the size of the player. It doesn't matter who it is. When you have Steve Austin on TV, no longer trying to be glitzy and glamorous, but when you have him being real, when you have real-life situations, and I think that's a lot of why the WWF has been so successful, is, you know, instead of throwing guys out there that are like cartoons, it's like real life. People can relate to it. And I think Paul was an innovator as far as that goes, because wrestling was always this fantasy world, and now it's more real life.
Let's go to the calls. Let's go to James in Washington. What's going on?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Real good.
Joel, when you were before you got in the business, did you ever read any of the sheets?
Yeah. Yep. I used to on and off. I get the Observer, actually.
Okay. And now, do you ever get any of the at home? Do you ever get any of the WCW or WWF pay-per-views?
No, I usually don't buy the pay-per-views.
Yeah. Any idea when you guys are going to be coming out to Seattle?
Wow, as far as live events, I know it won't be within the next month or two. After that, I really couldn't tell you. I don't know. It could be later this year. I would say just keep watching TNN and going to ECWWrestling.com.
Right.
And I'm sure you'll be able to find out.
All right. Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
You got it.
All right.
Okay, James. You know, as a fan, as a kid, and I know you watched. You ended up, as the 80s went on, watching a lot of the different circuits if they were on TV. And didn't you trade videos and stuff at some point too? Yeah,
I did that at one point. I was just trying to learn about the business and watch as much of it as possible, whether it be overseas or just the various different territories. Anything I could do to learn more about the business and watch more wrestling was.
Now, is there anything, like in the 80s and even more in the 70s? Every city sort of had its own little identity in wrestling, to me. It's like Dallas had this, and Houston was this, and New York was this. And then it lessened in the 80s because it became a WWF, WCW-oriented thing. And then in the 90s, it almost feels like, like the fans in every city are pretty darn similar. Like you don't have your... this thing will get over in New York because it's big guys. This thing will get over in California because it's work, or this will get over in Florida because it's amateur wrestling based. It's like that's kind of broken down a lot. But as a performer, do you have cities where you go, I can't wait to get to, just as an example, you're going to Kansas City for the first time this week, or someplace like that, or is it all just, well, the first time we're here, we'll see what the audience is like, or do you have a favorite city?
Yeah, I'll tell you, the first time we go into a market, you never know what to expect. And usually, actually, this has changed recently. Recently, we've gone into, Cincinnati and Milwaukee, and the fans those cities are big enough, and we haven't been there yet. Those fans are so rabid for it. They just want it so voraciously that they're up for the whole show, out of their seats, and they love it. And that's turned into a great TNN crowd for us is when we go into a new market. There have been times in the past where we would go into a new market and it wasn't as good. They didn't know some of the regular chants. They weren't as interactive. They hadn't seen the TV for as long, weren't into the character development, whatever. But in general, Philadelphia is great. And I'm sure everybody was expecting to hear that, but they are. They're smart fans by nature. Sometimes almost they want to be too smart to enjoy the product, I think. But still, the product winds up being so good, so surprising, so creative and innovative, and takes so many twists and turns that by the end of the night, on a given night, I've seen it happen at the arena where, disbelief gets suspended even by the people that you wouldn't think would be interested in doing that. And Philadelphia always winds up being a great crowd. New York in Queens at the Elks Lodge was always great because the fans stood outside for hours. They knew that the place could only hold whatever it was, between 1,000 and 1,500 fans. They knew that there were friends of theirs that were getting turned away and wouldn't be able to see the show. And whether we were up against, the last episode of Seinfeld or whether we were up against a big baseball game, it didn't matter. People turned out, 2 times as many people, 3 times as many people as the building could hold were interested in seeing the show, and the ones that were there gave you the response that sometimes you can't get in some of the other towns. But, like you say, it is national now, and we're starting to get a great response everywhere we go. And that's great.
One of the things since TNN started is there were a lot of markets that didn't get ECW, and so you didn't see in some of those markets what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of like the ECW influence, I guess, on the crowds. And now, I went to an indie show a couple weeks ago as a local promotion here, and I've been to their shows for years. And there really was never, because ECW never had strong television in the San Francisco area, you'd have your guys in the first couple of rows, and they were, whether it be videos or satellite or whatever, I mean, they, would wear ECW T-shirts and react like ECW fans, and they were super hardcore fans. But general bleacher fans and everything, I never saw what I would call an ECW influence in the audience. And at the last show, it was like tons of high school kids, and it was kind of like a quasi WWF ECW response to everything, which actually in some ways wasn't good when they tried to wrestle, but when they gave the people what the people wanted to see, which was like a table breaking. I mean, they were sitting there waiting for a table and blood, and when they finally got it, they popped like crazy. Yeah,
and it's interesting because, if you break it down city by city, I would venture to say that your area of California certainly has more people viewing right now WCW than ECW.
And there's no influence of WCW on the crowds?
None.
And you're right, I'm sure it's 10 times more WCW availability and probably viewership.
Right, but nobody's going to chant WCW when they see something. And this is happening across the board. I mean, you can go to, WWF Raw is War at anywhere. Not only Meadowlands Arena or Continental Airlines Arena and Madison Square Garden, which is markets that ECW is strong in, but it's starting to happen in places that ECW isn't as penetrative of, and you'll see people just chant ECW when they see something they like. And that's, certainly when they see something that is indicative of ECW, or certainly when it's one of our signature things, but it's to the point. I mean, a lot of, Taz and the Dudleys are doing great stuff right now in the WWF. They're there, they're doing their own thing, their new thing, but a lot of the time it just comes back to them getting ECW chants in lots of different towns. And I think it's good for us, and I think it means that people truly want to see us, because, like I said, whether it be at a WWF show with 20,000 people in the crowd, or whether it be at an independent show with 200, people are chanting ECW when they're excited, when they're chanting. They're chanting ECW. They're not chanting WCW, and it's certainly interesting, because, like I say, WCW probably has more viewers, but are those viewers, person for person, pound for pound, are they as into the product? And of course the answer is no.
We've got a ton of phone calls and emails for Joel Gertner, so I want to get through a couple of these things first. There's actually a marketing idea. Will ECW ever market different colored neck braces with bow ties on them? I think a lot of people in the crowd would wear them. That's a weird idea, but it's so weird it might actually work.
Yeah, I actually heard the idea from somebody about a half a week ago, too. I've seen people in the crowd dressed as me, and that's great. That's flattering. I'm glad they're that into my character. ECW so far hasn't done anything with me insofar as marketing goes, and I'd love for that to happen. So I guess keep sending the emails, and maybe it'll happen, hopefully in the near future. I know I was toying with the idea of putting out a T-shirt, and whether it'll be available through ECW or at my website, I'm not sure, but toying around with one where the front of it is kind of, the suit jacket with no. You ever seen those tuxedo T-shirts?
Oh yeah.
This would kind of be like the suit jacket with no shirt on, just looking like, the front of my character, I guess. And then in the back would be a top 10 list. And I was going to actually have the fans online vote for what they thought were their top 10 Gertnerisms, I guess a lot of people call them. And, do an online tally, and whatever the people thought were the top 10, they'd get put on in that order, and then I'd try to sell the shirt, because a lot of people do ask if I have anything available as far as neck braces or T-shirts, and right now I don't, but, hopefully in the near future. And hopefully an action figure as well. I mean, I think that would sell with, different color neck braces and bow ties and stuff like that. Now,
real quick, tell everyone about your website.
The website is, right now, it's at David FJ, F as in Franklin, J as in Joel, that's all one word, .simplenet.com/Gertner, which is a little bit tricky, but it's been there for a while, and David FJ is a guy he started doing my site like 2.5 years ago, and since then he's really become a great website developer of many different people's websites, and I know he works with the ECW website, and he's just somebody that through loyalty I've stuck with all along, and I believe the people at OneWrestling.com are going to be helping us out, and it'll probably be moving to JoelGertner.com in the very near future. But for now, it's at davidfj.simplenet.com/Gertner.
Is Kansas City or Wichita TV taping this week, or both?
I believe Kansas City is. I think at one point neither one was. I know I got my itinerary yesterday, so to go out this weekend. So I guess it is now a TV taping. I believe only tomorrow night in Kansas City is a TV taping. But with the cameras out there, to be honest, I don't know for sure. We could do TNN tomorrow and then tape some stuff for syndication the next day as well. I haven't seen any of the diagrams of the building, and I've never been to either, so I don't know. But I believe tomorrow night is TNN.
Okay. Hey, do you know anyone who has videos of Billy Graham, Bruno Sammartino, and early Ric Flair? I don't know.
I had them back when I was, 15. I would have been glad to. RF Video has a lot of stuff. Trying to think who I used to get videotapes from years ago. I mean, I'm going to be throwing out names of people that I don't even know if they're still in the videotape game. I would say go to RF Video as a first choice. They seem to have.
John McAdam? I don't know how to get
John
hold of
McAdam,
him.
I was just about to suggest. I mean, I certainly got a lot of tapes from John McAdam back in the day, and I don't know. I would also suggest Steve Friedlander.
Steve Friedlander's got Steve Friedlander, and he's got everything.
Yeah, his catalog. I mean, if you're not ready to sit through it, though, don't even try, because it's double-sided, and he miniaturizes 4 pages worth onto one 8.5 by 11 page, and still the thing comes out to be like 1,000 pages, 2,000 pages.
Yeah,
he's got literally thousands of tapes. Maybe at this point, tens of thousands. I mean, that's.
I would think tens of thousands, because he has
definitely by now. I'm sure.
He has every. I mean, that he probably has everything.
Yeah. So between those three, you should definitely be able to get lots of footage on those people.
Do you know how soon before Jerry Lynn's back? This is a question here.
I'm sorry?
How soon before Jerry Lynn is back?
I don't know for sure. I'm not sure. I think it's still going to be a few weeks. I don't know exactly. I'm not sure if he'll be ready for let's say the next pay-per-view or not. I don't know. I haven't really heard.
Yeah, I remember I just was told a couple of weeks ago what it was. I'm guessing 6 weeks, but I could be wrong about that. We'll try to check on that one. Get one or two more really quick before. These are actually all about. Let me go through some of these real quick, and then we'll get to the phone calls. Do you think Jim Cornette would be a good booker for WCW? I'm going to put this down for when we have Cornette on the show, but my short answer is no. Let's see. How can you forget the artist DDT on Thunder? Oh, that thing was horrid. Did you see that last night, Joel?
No, I didn't see it. I was in the studio last night, so no.
The artist did a DDT on Chris Candido. It was Chris Candido against Chavo Guerrero Jr.
I heard they put Chavo over?
Chavo went over when the artist interfered and did this DDT, and you have never seen a more missed DDT. I mean, the artist always, or 85% of the time, misses the move. Unless with Psicosis he hits it. With everyone else, he always misses it. And this was his worst miss to date. I felt so sorry for Candido having to sell this move, this move, and then plus it's the second night in, he's already jobbing for Chavo Guerrero. I mean, I was stunned. In more ways than one.
Somebody told me it was actually for better or worse. I mean, like I say, I hadn't seen Thunder, and somebody asked me today. They said, "Did you see Thunder?" I said, "No." They said Chris Candido lost to Chavo Guerrero, and it was the first thing they mentioned. It was the only thing they mentioned. It was what was on their mind. And I didn't hear what the surroundings were as far as why that happened and what the scenario was, but I don't know. I mean, that's interesting.
Yeah, he also did an interview where he said that he stretched Luthez and actually said Frank Gotch, not Carl Gotch. Let's see. Is Jim Cornette going to manage Al Snow and Steve Blackman? The answer to that one is also no. Let's go to John in Chicago. John, you're on the air with Joel.
Hey, Joel.
Yeah.
Hey, Dave, too. First of all, I want to compliment on your work and everything there. I think you've made a pretty smooth transition.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And like you were saying about the Dudleys, they last Monday at Chicago, they were hot. I was at that show, and they almost got like the second biggest pop there. There were two questions I wanted to ask you. The first question is, do you think it's time? I don't know. This came up with Mark Madden on their WCW internet show, where he was saying that somehow Heyman does not perceive the WWF as a competitor as much as he does WCW. Because of the personal history and the professional history he had over there. And I was wondering, do you think it's time? I mean, from my vantage point, I kind of tend to agree with him a little bit. I mean, I think it's time that ECW does go after the WWF more than they do. You know, just as far as verbally, just going out, saying the WWF, I mean, as far as copying us or, stuff like that. I mean, it seems like more or less that, and you guys, in my opinion, are now the number 2 promotion in the U.S. right now. So
profitability-wise.
Right. Or even just, pay-per-view and just,
pay-per-view-wise,
just
sure.
As far as inside a wrestling fan's blood. I mean, I would say if you go to, if you took 100 wrestling fans off the street right now, ask them to name the top 2 companies in the U.S., and they would say WWF and ECW. I would say the majority would.
I would disagree with that, but I would say that of the people who watch all 3 companies, I think they would say that, but I think that still the majority don't watch all 3 companies, and that's why I personally would think that.
I mean, if you were talking about in the South, then I would say yes.
Well, no, I think anywhere there's so many people that still, if you look at the ratings, that they still don't watch ECW. So when you're talking about the casual wrestling fan, I think even media or whatever, when media people talk to me about wrestling, it's still WWF, WCW. Now when you're talking about hardcore wrestling fans and wrestling fans who watch all 3, and you go, what are your 2 favorite? I think that they will all say WWF and ECW, and almost none will say WCW. But that's how I don't know, Joel. You could disagree if you want to.
No, educated wrestling fans that have been watching for a long time and that know what to look for, and they're into wrestling now, and they will be into wrestling 5 or 10 years from now, even if it goes through a down period. Yeah, you're going to find that their top 2 are the WWF and ECW, and for all the reasons that make sense. But as far as, should we go after the WWF, I mean, no, I don't know that we need to, any more that, I mean, no, I don't think so. I think first we should try to convince everybody of what I think is a truth, and what anybody else who thinks it's true, I mean, they'll certainly try to convince people, too, that ECW is number 2. Hands down, number 2, no worse than number 2. Maybe you think it's number 1 in your heart, but At worst, it's number 2. As long as there are people out there that think we're number 3, and for the most part, the people that think we're number 3 are people who have never watched.
That's
or
what I think.
people, maybe they've started watching on TNN, but their market never had syndication. So they've been watching WCW for 20 years.
Right.
They've been watching us for 20 weeks. Those people might still think we're number 3, but we're not. And until we convince them that the only way we could be looked at as a number 3 compared to WCW being number 2 is market cap. In other words, they have so much more money behind them that even if we're making money, if they're losing tons of it, just because they have that much more to lose, they might still at the end of the year, at the end of the decade, have more money. But that doesn't matter, because as far as market cap goes, we're not going to be able to become number 2 for who knows how long. But in every other aspect of the game, we are number 2 right now. We need to convince people of that. And then when we get more people convinced of that, it becomes we and the World Wrestling Federation at that point become, the top 2 across the board and the big 2, I guess, if you want to refer to it that way.
One last question I had for you. Now you were talking about the stuff as far as people will say as far as the controversial remarks and everything. I don't want to make this like an uncomfortable question or anything like that, but it just brought to mind when you had that. I don't know, just from an outsider looking in, when the JFK comment.
Yeah, that one wouldn't be on WWF. That is one thing that wouldn't be on WWF.
No,
right.
Certainly not. I'll be honest with you too. I could tell from the tone of the way you were asking the question. By the way, about 2 or 3 words in that's where you were going to go, and it is touchy. And Dave, I know you didn't like it.
No, not at all.
Okay. I can say this much. I don't think it's worse than a lot of things that have aired on Saturday Night Live during their weekend update segment. In Saturday Night Live's 25-year history. And at the time, we were on in syndication. We were on at like 1 a.m.
Yeah,
on whatever stations we were on. And Saturday Night Live, they've been on NBC doing Weekend Update at about 12:15, which is earlier than some of the markets we're in, and probably same time or later or whatever.
I think I saw it at 3 o'clock in the morning in Chicago.
Yeah. But the point is, in comparison, I don't think it's the worst stuff that has ever been aired on television. I understand how people could find it offensive. I tried to make light of it and be humorous, and maybe maybe I should be taken to task, or maybe not. Maybe some things just can't be made light of. Like I say, it's very hard to offend me because I can see comedy in maybe some things that some people can't see comedy in. But man, Dennis Leary is out there with CDs, and George Carlin and a lot of comedians, and there's a lot of comedy on television, whether it be network or whether it be cable or whether it be pay-per-view. There's a lot of stuff that's been on radio airwaves and television airwaves, and I don't think the Kennedy stuff was near the worst of it.
Well, to me, the one thing on that is that I remember when the Monday after Owen Hart died, when Craig Kilborn made the jokes and some of the stations were playing Free Falling, and wrestling fans were furious about it, and I was, because I felt it was like too soon afterwards, and to me it was like the exact same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, to me, that was the only thing that I've had some problems with your work. Otherwise, I really think you've done a really great job on ECW on TNN, and I hope to hear. I hope if you get more TV time and everything, that you continue to have good success along with the company.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate that.
I want to run through a couple of email things. We got a couple of calls as well as to get to, so we're going to rush through this. It was said on WCW.com's WCW Live show, I guess just a few minutes ago, that Hulk Hogan not only has creative control over his contract, which we all know, but the contract provides for him to be the main event of 6 pay-per-views for each of the next 2 years. Now, That may very well be right. I remember just like a couple of days ago, I asked someone about in WCW what the contract was, and they told me it was 2 years. It had 2 more years to go, but it was 6 pay-per-views over the 2 years as opposed to 6 each year, as far as the guaranteed aspect. But this may be right. I'm not saying that what I just told you was right. I'm just saying that I asked that, and that's what I was told. This is from Dave Stubbs, who is actually the sports editor of the Montreal Gazette, and he just goes, I'd be interested to know what you thought, and it's Joel, about the bump that New Jack and Vic Grimes took on the pay-per-view. What kind of fear did you feel at the moment, and how are both guys doing right now?
I was certainly afraid at the moment. I would think that a lot of people were, either afraid or worried or concerned, different levels. But I mean, I'm not a worker by trade. I'm not a wrestler, a bumper, however you want to look at it. So I can somewhat put myself in their shoes, but I mean, not really. I don't know what it's like to be up there. I don't know what it's like to fall. I know what it's like to be on a table and have New Jack come down on me, but I don't know what it's like to actually do the dive. And I'm sure it's excruciating, and I tip my hat to both of them in the sense that they were trying to do and did what they could do while they were out there to gain interest and to keep the fans, as into the show as possible. They did in their minds, what they needed to do, and you can argue all day whether or not the bar should be raised in professional wrestling or in ECW. You can say it makes the rest of the show tough to follow. It does. I mean, the thing is, just like with everything in wrestling, you can argue left and right, and you're going to have to meet in the middle because it could all be true. And everything about that bump was exactly what it's being reported to be, and everything about that bump was oh so wrong and oh so right. And I give them credit for, you have to give them credit for taking the risk. Is it a risk they should have taken? That's not for me to decide. It's for them to decide, or if they're going to do it on an ECW show, then it's for the boss to decide. It's not for me to decide. But as far as whether I was worried or not, you cringe when you see it happen. There's nothing you can do about it. It's happened. You hope that everything is going to be all right. I live close enough to Danbury, Connecticut. It was a local show for me. It was a drive. And on my way home, I stopped into the hospital and visited New Jack. He seemed, he had a concussion, no doubt about it, as you would expect. But what I found unbelievable is that he flew home the next night.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. Was it too risky? Not really for me to decide. You can't. I don't think. I think. I just look at the courage of it all, and I say, he did what he could do while he was out there to up the ante and to just keep it exciting. And he certainly went above and beyond the call of duty. Both of them did, New Jack and Grimes, in all the good ways and all the bad ways. Whether it was good, whether it was bad, he went above and beyond the call of duty. Both of them did. And that's, that's all you can ask for, and that's representative of what ECW's been doing and what the workers in ECW do to get the crowd involved and get them into it, and since the beginning of the company.
And this is from Mike in Syracuse, who goes, do you still talk to the Dudleys? And when the Dudleys went to WWF, did you have any interest, or did they have any interest in you, or how did any conversations go with the WWF at that point?
I still talk to the Dudleys on occasion. As far as interest, no. At the time that the Dudleys went to the WWF, I was already into a contract. So, it would have been a moot point. It's a hypothetical, because I signed, I believe around May 1st of 99, I signed for a 3-year deal. And that was a good few months before the Dudleys went. So I knew on May 1st when I signed that ECW was where I was going to be for the next 3 years, and I was very excited about it. So, me going to the WWF was never an issue.
What are your thoughts of how everything went down with Sabu?
The Sabu thing is a tricky thing, and I don't know that I'm the right person to ask. I mean, I know, just as much, I guess, as the next guy. As far as my take on it, I guess it's his word against ECW's or Paul's or however it's being viewed. I don't know. I mean, it's just like anything else in wrestling, and it's just like anything else in business. It's, everybody's got a different deal. Everybody's got their contract, and I've never read Sabu's contract. I'm not interested in reading Sabu's contract. I don't know what it says. If he is in breach of contract by refusing to work, then, to the letter of the law, if he's in breach of contract, then I guess it's all on him. I'm probably the wrong person to ask. I don't know.
Let's go. We've got. Let's get through some of these calls. We've got Ricardo in New York. You're up with Joel.
Yes. Hi, Joel. Hi, Dave.
Hey.
Is it? Well, I have a quick comment and a question for Joel. Now that Bischoff is back in ECW, I guess he has a second chance now to show us that he's at the same level as McMahon, which I think he's not, and he will never be. But he always tried to put himself on the level of Vince McMahon, and I guess now he's going to show us if he really has what it takes, and he has really learned anything about the business. I don't know what are your thoughts about it, about Bischoff coming back?
Oh, he and Vince Russo both have their chance, to I guess prove that they were unjustly dumped. I guess.
Yeah.
They have the chance.
Yeah, well, I hope he does well, because I know that the business gets better when there's competition and when both federations are doing pretty well. My question to Joel, yes?
No, go ahead.
My question to Joel is, could you clarify or explain to us what happened to some of us that don't know really what happened to Mr. Gordon? That's his name.
Todd Gordon.
Yeah, and is it true that WCW pretty much used him to lure some main eventers from ECW to WCW? And if this is true, can we really blame the ECW for going after WCW? And could you tell me if that's true or not?
Yeah, as far as Todd Gordon goes, around the time that he started not to be around ECW anymore, I wasn't really an inside player in all that. I don't, keep in touch with Todd Gordon, or I never really, spoke to him except when I was at work. So I'm not too familiar with the whole situation. I'd like to say that what I think happened is he was bought out, and I know that there was speculation or talk that he was trying to go to WCW or take people to WCW. I don't really know the whole situation. I just know that his interest in the company was sold back to the company.
Well, what do you know about it, Dave?
I remember hearing so much about it when it happened, and a lot of it was contradictory. But it's basically, I think that they had some sort of a deal with Paul and him. I don't know exactly what it was, but Todd had lost a lot of money early on the company, and they had made some deal where Paul actually, I think he paid Todd back some of it, maybe all of it. So he kind of got back his investment, or maybe some of his investment, and they had a falling out, and there was something to do with there must have been some contact with WCW and Terry Taylor and Todd Gordon, and it ended up with a split with Todd being out of the company. I remember always hearing that we would hear the whole story at some point, and then sort of like it was one of those wrestling stories where, you got that much of it, and more details, I don't remember, other than the basics of what you said was how I remember it.
Yeah. Joel?
Yeah.
I really like your Spanish remarks. Sometimes you that's hilarious. I think you're great. And
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're much better than Mark Martin in my book. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. I'm a fan of Mark Madden's, and I think he is. I think that's a little bit of a mutual admiration society.
Yeah.
I think he does his own good stuff. But thank you very much for the kind words. Muchas gracias, mi amigo.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Ricardo. Let's go to Dominic in Virginia. Dominic, how you doing today?
Joel, doing very good. Joel, first question. If you had to choose your own Dante's Inferno, which would it be? To watch a lifetime of Hulk Hogan matches from 95 on, or 2 naked lap dances for the rest of your life from Mae Young and the Blue Meanie?
Oh, man, I don't know. Wow. That's tough. I'm surprised you didn't throw Roller Jam or at least Rockin' Bowl in there somewhere.
Rockin' Bowl. I watched that the other night.
Did you?
About 5 minutes.
Oh, God, that was horrible. I saw it for 5 minutes.
Oh, I only lasted about 5 minutes on Rockin' Bowl too.
Yeah, and that was just the intro. What I talked about, I talked to David about a couple months ago, when they were really starting to push Doring and Roadkill, and they were also trying to push kind of the you and Cyrus feud. Well, I was thinking of, I don't know how, if this ever happened, but have you kind of be kind of managing Doring and Roadkill up to towards the pay-per-view, and kind of, to me, I thought it'd be the perfect, you guys would complement each other very good, especially you and Doring with so many sexual innuendos, and basically talk about teaming some chicks over and over again would sound good, and turning Roadkill into basically a complete complement of you, neck brace, shirt the whole nine, but still the only thing you could say is chickens. And probably pussy, but I'm pretty sure chicken's the only word to say. What would be your thought on that?
I think I never heard anything official about this, but I remember hearing, really, I think I was just reading it on the internet maybe, some preliminary reports, for whatever that word is worth on a lot of these internet websites. Not yours, Dave, but there's a lot of stuff out there where things that are reported as news aren't. But
yeah.
I like to read rumors and false news and everything that's out there just to keep my finger on the pulse of the wrestling public. And I remember seeing some preliminary reports that I was going to be managing Danny Doring and Roadkill, but that didn't materialize, and that's nothing that I ever heard officially from within the company. But I'm sure that would have, I would have given that my all and put all of my best efforts forward and developed my character in such a way that had it gone in that direction, I'm sure it would have been immensely entertaining. I love Doring and Roadkill stuff. I think they're developing phenomenally. Roadkill is the one guy on the active roster, I think, that's as young as me or younger than me. He's really young, but he's very, both of them, Danny and Roadkill, are very smart to the business and just great athletes in their respective ways. And they're two of the guys that are going to be the future of ECW and the future of the wrestling business. So I would have loved to have been paired up with them.
Oh, definitely, because I remember I talked to Stephen Prazak about it, and he loved the idea. Not much more to say. Get some more calls in, and I will see you in Richmond on the 31st.
Thank you very much.
All right, enjoy the rest of your night.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Dominic. Let's go to Wendell. We're running out of time, so you're the last caller.
Hey, Dave, I got a question for you. Now, wasn't Hogan signed on it wasn't the wrestling company. Wasn't he signed on some other part of Turner?
Initially, he was. I think that they may have. I'm not sure of how it worked after that. The initial contract for sure had the bulk of the money signed somewhere else, so the company's bottom line wouldn't look so bad. But I think maybe when the company made so much money that could have been, it's possible it could have been transferred, where it was all coming out of the wrestling company. Because I know, with Bret Hart's deal, I know that the original offer would have been most of the money actually would not have been paid by the wrestling company, but when he actually signed, all of it was, because the company's fortunes had increased so well.
Right. Okay. Because I was trying to figure out if he was signed to the TNT movie, whatever they network.
Well, if we look at it, he's done he's only done maybe one movie, right?
Right.
With them. He did the one that they publicized a lot that I can remember. So I don't know. He's got him hostage though. Hostage situation. Holding the company hostage. Can you imagine, Joel, 6 more pay-per-views? If this is really true, if he's got 6 pay-per-views this year and next year, they're going to be under a .1 for sure.
Yeah, Hogan, obviously, what it is that he brings to the table and what he does well, because you can see that there are a lot of people, well, there aren't really let the shows, period. but there are a lot of people who go to the shows still bring Hogan signs. And that's got to be a testament to something, I guess. I think the interesting part of the whole thing is that, talking about Hogan and contracts, I believe he was, part of his deal is that, when a pay-per-view does better than its counterpart pay-per-view from the previous year, he gets a percentage of the gain in profit. And
there's
what
much
you'll
there.
notice is going on now is that the buy rates are slipping.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, and I don't know that that's Hogan's fault. It's the company's fault. But it's a good thing that he's not being asked to give money back when, when Halloween Havoc 2000 winds up doing a quarter of the business that Halloween Havoc 99 did. It's a good thing that it's not like Jeopardy where you answer the $800 question wrong at the beginning of the game, you go to negative 800. I guess, that's, Hogan positioned himself real well. But I guess the point of that whole thing is that Hogan is a pay-per-view draw, or at least he's a very expensive commodity for WCW, but he's there to be a pay-per-view draw. And he has, in the past and throughout his career and throughout the history of wrestling on pay-per-view, from the very beginning up until now, up until recently, he has been a big pay-per-view draw. And now, maybe he still is. Maybe for the amount of people that are buying the pay-per-views, maybe a lot of them are buying it for him. Who knows? But the point is, the proof is not in the pudding anymore, and the buy rates are slipping. What that's attributable to, like I say, WCW has a lot of people there, a lot of great talent, but they're just not doing it.
Joel, we gotta run. Don't forget, tomorrow we're gonna have Les Thatcher here. Monday we're gonna have Bret Hart, and we'll be back 6 p.m. tomorrow. And thanks, Joel, for doing the show. Let's go to Cincinnati, Ohio. We've got Les Thatcher on the line. Les, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, David. How about yourself?
I'm doing really good. Really good. Before we start discussing current wrestling scene, why don't you tell everyone about the Brian Pillman Memorial Show that you're involved in promoting?
All right. Yes, that's May the 25th, Thursday, Schmidt Fieldhouse on the Xavier campus. Actually, this year, Photos with the Stars starts at 4. That'll run till 6. Overlapping that just a little bit at 5:30, we're going to start the independent match because I think we have so many this year. We're going to run the indie showcase from 5:30 till 7. Introduction to the VIPs. Then probably get the ball rolling at 7:30 with the WCW, WWF, and ECW sending a match this year as well. And
So who do you know who's wrestling, or do you have any matchups made or anything like that?
No matches made yet, but confirmed to come, Benoit, Malenko, Guerrero, Saturn, D'Lo Brown, Road Dogg, Al Snow, at least for one of the 2 days. We're doing the Mark Curtis Fantasy Camp the day before on Wednesday.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Oh, no? Okay, yeah. Well, we're gonna have the whole McGill on a press release next week, but yeah, we're doing the Fantasy Camp the day before for Pam.
So this is like a Thursday, Friday type deal?
Wednesday, Thursday.
Oh, Wednesday, Thursday. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I decided we thought we'd move the Pillman so it made get the observer out easier on Wednesday, and then you could fly in on Thursday morning.
Well, gosh, Les, that was just really nice of you.
Now, lifetime subscription, David. Don't forget. We've got let me see. Dallas Page is confirmed. Terry Taylor's coming. Chris Candido. Heyman has promised me a match. We're not sure what yet. He said closer in, when he knew who he could spare, but he promised a good one. We've talked to Jerry Super Crazy, the Impact players defending their title or something along those lines. So I'll be happy to get whatever he wants to send me. But the fans that are coming in from out of state will have a whole afternoon of wrestling. So, like I say, and some good indie kids. We're going to bring some of the developmental guys from WWF and WCW. I'm going to have some of my best kids, a couple guys out of Malenko's camp. And when the lineup's complete, we'll have her out on a press release.
Okay, that's true.
Tickets went on sale today. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there, but yeah, tickets went on sale Ticketmaster this morning.
Okay, great. Brian, anything you want to talk to Les about before we got to take a break?
We're actually pretty much up to the break, so I'll let you handle that.
Okay, well, you got to go now?
Yeah, I got to go.
Okay, Brian's wrestling tonight, so he's got to take off.
Oh, I read that. Brian, congratulations on your debut.
Thanks.
Debut? He's the tag team champion.
Oh, really? Oh, I thought you were just starting to. Where did I read that?
Up, Dave.
I didn't write it. I didn't write his debut. I congratulated him for winning the tag team.
Maybe that's what it was.
I said every tag team
It'll be my debut on this title defense.
Yeah, first title defense since he got his head shaved.
Right. Well, congratulations on shaving your head.
It's a vast improvement.
Okay, before you go, tell everyone about all the stuff up on the website and Figure 4. And
I also got to plug the Wrestling World magazine, which I just got yesterday, which has the greatest photos of Dave Meltzer that you will ever see, with the biggest mullet that you will ever see, and it's on newsstands right now. And up on the website today, we have some new updates. We've got some new news stories up there. SmackDown report that a few of you have been commenting on. That's up there as well. Plus the new issues of Figure 4 and Observer. And all that stuff is up there at WrestlingObserver.com.
There's something. Is the Kane story up there, too?
Yes.
That's good.
For those of you in the Orlando area, there's a there's going to be a luncheon that Kane will be attending, so you can check that out on the website.
Yeah. Now, so tell everyone real quick the story about that thing.
I can't.
You can't? Well, then I will. Okay, I will. Brian wrote a story. It was a fictitious story about Kane speaking at a luncheon, and he put it up, and then the people who edit our website, they didn't want to put it on because I think it was like the time of the luncheon.
The deadline, the deadline for reservations had passed.
He put reservation time for this luncheon where Kane was going to be speaking to some, like, what club was it?
It was like the Orca something country club.
Okay, some club, and they go,
Kane would not speak at the luncheon.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's the story. And we've got a lot of wrestling news to talk about, and we've got a full bank of calls, and we just got this in. I guess it ran on the AP this morning. I don't know if you've heard about this, Les, but I'll just read you the AP story. Republican Governor Christine Whitman and Assembly Democratic Leader Joseph Doria have scheduled a news conference for Monday. Extreme wrestling events are low-budget and gory versions of professional wrestling. Performers often use razors to draw blood. Whitman spokesman Peter McDonough tells the Star-Ledger of Newark, which, by the way, wrote in the editorial about this, the primary goal is to regulate the audience and to ensure participants are safe. Doria tells the newspaper one of the bill's provisions would ban those under 16 from attending matches. So anyway, man, this kind of stuff just gets me really, really mad, and I'm not a big fan of some forms of things that they do in fact, the antics that was described in the newspaper article last Sunday that has led to this whole thing coming down the way it has. I mean, I don't really derive any enjoyment personally out of watching guys scrape their foreheads with cheese graters and that type of stuff. And if you want to even go so far as to regulate wrestling, and it's regulated statewide where everyone has to adhere to whatever the same rules are, and they're legitimate rules, I don't really have a problem with that if they go, okay, you cannot use cheese graters, or you cannot use knives, or whatever it is, or mouse traps, or broken glass, or even fire in the production of a professional wrestling show. I don't have a problem with that. I have a major problem with a double standard to where something called extreme wrestling that does things which does that 90% of what it does are the same things that the World Wrestling Federation does, would be under different auspices, and the very few under like to make a rule because 15 kids out of a crowd of 200 are under 16 at a Jersey All-Pro Wrestling show, just as an example, as opposed to 7,000 at the Meadowlands that are watching the same thing, and maybe worse in some cases. I just think that that's kind of ridiculous. And then, you've got, in fact, we may need to get Paul Heyman actually on the show this coming week. We always need to. We've always needed to, but it's like this is actually like a pretty important thing, especially if this is going down on Monday, because Extreme Wrestling, just based on the name of his company, is going to target him specifically, and I think it's really unfair. I mean, whatever rules anyone wants to apply to pro wrestling, as long as they are uniform and specified. You can't go in there and go, well, we don't want anything like this, and then they'll come like, unless you're a promoter, if they go in there and tell you can't do, and you run shows probably at high schools where that they would probably frown on swearing or something, certainly they would.
In fact, a lot of the ADs and so forth that do business with us will express that and say, please hold down any sexually suggestive, phrasings or gestures. And so in our valets, we have that. We don't cover them up in, burlap sacks, but, we ask them to be tasteful, or a little more so than, we would allow otherwise.
The thing, and I wonder how this is affecting your stuff, but, I noticed it at an independent show I went to a couple of weeks ago at a high school, that even though the product presented was not really any different than it was, say, 3 or 4 months ago, because of the heavy influence of ECW and the chance of, We Want Puppies at WWF shows, that the crowd chants are more vulgar than say they were a year ago.
Yes, I agree.
So you've seen that on your shows then?
Yes, oh yeah. And I try to, I limit, try to limit the guys to ass, hell, damn. We have children, and we try to build a family audience. But, no, I know what you're saying exactly. Yes, a lot of times the fans are more vulgar than the wrestlers would be. And it's not, it's not the older fans necessarily. Some of these are 11, 12-year-old kids.
Because they're influenced by what they see on television.
Absolutely.
And the newer fans are influenced. And, it's like fans learn from what they see on television. And as far as proper reaction from fans, one of the things, when you see someone on television get a giant pop, then when you see him live, you think you're supposed to pop gigantically for him because he's a star. And when you hear fans react and chant, "We want puppies," every time you see a woman, you think it's the proper reaction because that's the reaction that's encouraged,
sure.
At least on TV. So at least
show us your, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, yeah. That's the ECW chant, right?
Right.
Which actually predated "We Want Puppies" by a long period, and probably "We Want Puppies" is a lot tamer.
You were talking about that jersey. But, I think I agree with you that, that there should be something standardized or, it should be the same across the board, a level playing field. But, on the other hand, this doesn't surprise me because these little outfits that do the hardcore almost exclusively, I can't talk exclusively, don't regulate themselves. I can get an example up here.
You're right.
A company lost about a year and a half, was thrown out of 2 buildings. Tried to start up a year later and lost the building they started in on the first night they started. But some of this silliness was, one of the things is that one of the local junior high schools, a teacher took away a picture from a kid that was showing around. Well, the picture was of this kid who was, I think, 14 or 15, with a stripper who would be coming to these shows, not as valets or referees or, but to sell Polaroid. And so where did you get this? Oh, I got it up at so-and-so's wrestling show. So then they had the city police in there. Look, So, well, let's face it, I'm a parent, a grandparent. Our 15-year-old kids, 14-year-old, sure, they're going to see it. But to sell them that sort of thing, it's just inviting trouble.
Well, no, a lot of these promoters that do some of this stuff do ask for it and probably beg for, there are promoters in this industry who beg for regulation.
Oh, absolutely.
Seriously. But whatever, and I'm not opposed to regulation, and I'm not really, I don't know if I'm in favor of it, because there are days that I think that it should be there because of these incidences that we talk about that are out of control, where people who aren't trained are doing really stupid things, and I think,
Absolutely.
And then there's other times where I just go, well, regulation's just a whole bunch of red tape, and what's the difference of pro wrestling in states that it's regulated and it's not? And there's no difference other than, taxes and hassles and things.
Well, I'll tell you an offshoot of this is over in Indiana, you can no longer run a wrestling show in a National Guard armory.
Oh, because of IWA?
Yes, yeah. Because of all the hardcore, all the blood and gore. So, in terms of that, it hurts us all. Because the National Guard armories are obviously the easiest place to get into, and easiest to do business were. And I wonder about the trickle-down effect there, where the Adjutant General in whatever state reads in their monthly newsletter or something that, the guy in Indiana did this. Well, maybe I better do it too, whether it's necessary or not. And it just makes it tougher to do business.
Do you, it's an interesting thing. Do you, as an independent promoter who, I know the basic type of wrestling that you want to promote, that you train your guys to do you feel like pressured now that to almost provide a product that you don't like at times because...
Yes, absolutely.
Because the audience is like forcing you?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. But, one thing that's refreshing up in WWF land, seem to be seeing a little longer matches that are being a little more, using a little more skill opposed to just the quick little 2-minute deals with a run-in and no finish. And I applaud that for whatever reason. But I think at some point you have to give them the product that you're advertising. And I think that's, I continue to try to do that. It's like we don't do a hardcore match as such, but I'll take and tie a chair to a clothesline to one ring post and a big cookie sheet to another ring post, a garbage can to the third ring, et cetera, et cetera. Now the two wrestlers battle to get to these weapons. So there's a little, skill and competitiveness involved in getting the weapon before you're able to use it. So, but I mean, yeah, we don't do those every show.
Yeah, or every match.
No, absolutely. And we do get color occasionally, but it's for a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not every match and not every show.
Well, so now here's one of the points right here in this thing that starts worrying me is because they're talking about performers using razors, okay? And it's like, okay, that's been part of wrestling since before you started in wrestling.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, probably going back to the 40s.
What do you mean before you started?
Well, I brought you on that you've been around for longer than anyone except for Dory Funk Jr. But no, the whole thing is like that's been around now. If they're gonna, and then there have been states that have banned the blade, okay, and again, if there's educated discussion and they make regulations of wrestling that sane people can live with, I don't really have a problem with it. But when you go, we're going to ban, okay, let's say performers, they're using this as like a scare tactic, the governor is using this thing. These guys are doing razor blades, blah, 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 but they're only going after like low-budget wrestling. Well, the fact is that, my God, we could see that, on most Mondays on Raw and every single WF pay-per-view, the same thing. So it's like, I mean, if it's that bad, then go after every, like I said, I just want consistency, and you never get it when you deal with pub. That's one of the reasons why.
Well, this state in Ohio for years was unregulated. It was always just city license. Like if you wrestled, you had a license in Cincinnati, a license in Columbus, or a license even in a smaller city like Mansfield. But every city wasn't licensed either. But just over the last 3 years, there's a state commission. They don't really regulate. They just want you buy the license and you pay $50 per show for a permit. They never come to your shows, but the point was when we found out there was a commission, we asked for for the rule book and the application, the whole thing. So all they sent you was the boxing rule book, basically at that time with boxing crossed out and wrestling written in, and it was ludicrous because they were saying each participant must have life insurance and health insurance, carried by the promoter on each participant. There must be an ambulance and crew, in attendance, and I told the guy, I said, listen, do you know what kind of budget these little shows run on? I said, you're talking about just for one night only, for me giving you more than my payroll is for 2 shows, just for just the adornment. Well, and of course, they took some of that stuff out, but I mean, the people running it had no clue what the hell they were running.
Yeah, that's where it starts to worry me. I mean, I have this feeling there's going to be some hastily drafted bill, and I don't know. But, I mean, there are states where it's actually illegal to do a fixed wrestling match. I don't know if you know that or not.
I don't doubt it, Dave.
It might be, I think Washington might be one of them, so Brian's in a lot of trouble.
He's a fugitive already as we speak.
That's right. They're gonna bust him tonight. Before we go to the break and start taking phone calls, I wanted to ask you your take on this week's situation in Atlanta.
The soap opera behind the scenes would draw more money than the one on the scene.
Yeah.
I tell you what, I heard you were, I guess, reading a fax or an email or something from one of your listeners about Bischoff's learned lesson. And that was my comment on my show Wednesday night, was that, if someone told me that on WCW Live he had mentioned that, he had been studying how Vince and WWF recovered in 97, and been sitting back taking all this in. Well, if indeed he's done that, and if he's profited from those mistakes, I mean, the guy has done some good things for this company, but in truth, because of an offshoot of how he did these things, that actually planted the seed for all this, disruption that's been going on down there over the last 6-7 months anyway. But if the guy, it's not to say he's not smart. It's to say if he's learned by his mistakes and committed does something, I say, maybe it's a good situation, at least short term. It just depends. But, here's the thing, David. You can put anybody in that seat you want. You can put anybody in the creative department, but if you don't have the talent to carry out what you're doing, and they're still 6 months to a year away, and I don't think that's what the people above them realize.
Well, the thing is like we've now seen Vince Russo and then Kevin Sullivan each get 2 months, and for better or for worse, and neither of them in their 2 months really showed anything that they were going to turn around. But at the same time, if they had done the right things, they wouldn't have shown those signs in the 2 months either.
No.
So if the idea that those people from above are going like, we need to turn this around, the realistic part of it is if they really are building a turnaround, they're going to have to go down more because they're going to have to remove the few people, the people that the few audience members left are still kind of into.
Right. I think
phase them down and wait for these, these other guys aren't going to draw 10,000 people in a month when you put them in the main event. And, you've got to build them to where they are, and it's not going to, that's probably months and months away.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, one thing is they've got to use Hogan, Flair, and Terry Funk, short term, if that's all he's going to be with the company, but use those guys to elevate the better mid-card guys like Kidman and Candido. I think Candido is in a position to really, show himself, if he can get his act together here. And obviously he's got the capabilities, I think. It's just go ahead.
The thing with him is like, I feel, I thought Chris Candido had a really good debut on Monday.
Right.
And then I thought on Tuesday, even though, there was the storyline made sense, I don't know, maybe it's just my upbringing, but I don't think the second match on television in your territory, you should already beat a guy that you're planning on elevating. I mean, there's a time that you can.
I don't either. And the other thing I was going to say that has to change, I believe, and Kevin Sullivan's a personal friend. I have no vendetta, but just sitting on the outside watching is, I think, several of the angles or the deals are too retro. And, they need, I honestly, and with no meanness meant to anyone, is I think if I'd have been making any changes down there, I would have tried the combination of Russo and Ferrara with Terry Taylor as the final word from the wrestling end to basically use the eraser and rewrite, in the wrestling vein like McMahon did in the North. And I think that, I'm not saying that's a proven horse or that's a guaranteed winner, but to me that's the one I think was more middle ground and built for long term.
Well, they may be doing that with Bischoff, being the eraser for Russo.
Right.
We're going to start with Tony in California. How you doing, Tony? Oh, Long Island. I'm sorry. Tony.
Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing really good.
Good. How you doing, Les? Good. A couple things I wanted to touch on. I hear you talking about this issue with Christy Todd Whitman. And, I have heard you say in the past, you and Brian, conversation about, the Mick Foleys and that type of wrestler will probably spawn a whole generation of guys who are going to try to do insane stuff and kill themselves on the independent scene for next to nothing. So, in a way, this is probably a good thing to try to maybe help deter that from happening, wouldn't you say? Because nobody's going to...
If it's done intelligently, I'm not against this. I just think that you need to be fair to everyone from top to bottom. And if you have things that you are not going to allow, they have to be specified so promoters know what they can't do. And then I think it has to be where, if the WWF can then go and do it, or if, it's like, I look at this bill, okay, and the thing that scares me is because it says it's a bill of extreme wrestling. So that means that Paul Heyman is going to be looked at with a microscope, and there are things, maybe, there are things that he did in the last pay-per-view, like the New Jack Vic Grimes thing, which was very poorly thought out and was a potential disaster anyway.
Right.
And if it wasn't there, it would be, I would think it would be better for all concerned. But I'm looking at that and I'm going like, you just can't do a bill and say like, okay, like, because no one under 16 can go to ECW, which I'm not even thinking is the worst idea in the world, but I'm just looking about fairness. If they can't go to ECW, why can they go to WWF, and why can WWF get away with whatever it wants? And these independents who are, most of your independent promoters that don't have, and that are not like Les, who, at least if nothing else, has a long background of a lot of different forms of wrestling. A lot of the independent promoters that are new, what they know about wrestling and what wrestling is based on what's on WWF television this week. So all they're doing is copying, and they're being come down on for doing what's basically copying, or at worst going a little bit further with more swearing, or a few things they may have seen on a Japanese video, or that their wrestlers have watched on a Japanese video.
Right.
Anyway, why don't you go ahead with your point? I'm sorry I bumped in.
No, I was just getting back to that. I mean, I understand where you're coming from, but I think that, I think more wrestlers get injured now than ever in the past. It seems like the perception is there. And I think it might not be so bad that there's something, because all that's going to happen that I foresee happening is guys just pushing it to the limit and raising the bar more and more. And these in-ring tragedies, I think, I watched that New Jack Grimes thing, and you could just tell, even before they did it, when they were up there, that something wasn't right and they shouldn't have done it. And, it's only sooner or later where more and more guys are going to get more and more seriously injured. And these guys, some of these guys on the independents, and I know some guys that do it, some guys who just do anything to try to promote and advance their career, things that they shouldn't be doing. And, you go to some of these independent shows and you see some of the stuff that's being done, and nobody's going to stop them. Maybe regulation might be something to stop them.
Can I interject something here?
Sure.
I think, too, we're talking about a little different breed, and what I mean by that is a lot of these kids that are doing this at the independent level, I won't say they have no talent to do a standardized modern-day version style of wrestling, but I think on a lot of cases, a lot of them haven't even attempted that. They just think this is a shortcut to making them as some sort of star. And they think the more bizarre the deal, the more hair they have on their butt. And, where I think the guys up at the top, and I think if they were to speak out in both companies, have gotten to the point where they think the hardcore matches are pretty much slapstick. Think the newness is wearing off anyway. But a lot of these kids think that, and the funny thing is I talk to, people that run the developmental departments of both the big companies on almost a weekly basis. And they'll be the first to tell you if that's what somebody sends to them, it goes in the garbage can for the most part anyway. They're interested to see if these guys have any foundation, not, how many tables they can go through or how many thumbtacks they can stick in their head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the guys who are concentrating more on the wrestling and the foundation will have nothing to worry about. I think it's just the guys who are pushing it to the limit.
Right. Well, I think these guys think they have to prove more that way because they, like I say, maybe necessarily don't have the technical skills, but have never even tried. They think this is a shortcut.
Right. A couple other things, Dave, real quick. I heard something you said earlier in the week on listening to one of the archive shows, which hit home with something I have felt as well. You were talking about Flair at the pay-per-view. Mm-hmm. Flair wearing the T-shirt, and the same thing. I thought the same thing, and that touched on a couple of other things, like a couple of these guys, and I'll give you two examples. When they had the Berlin character, and they were building him up to be this great heel. And the interviews were good, I thought, or were progressing. And then all of a sudden, this guy has his first match, and he takes off his shirt. And he looks like he's about 160 pounds. And another guy is like a Tank Abbott when I see him. This guy should be wrestling with a tank top on, in my opinion. If I was running the company, I'd be making him wear a tank top or a cut-off shirt, because this guy's walking around with this disgusting gut, and it just makes it look terrible. And when you said about Flair, that's the way I felt watching it, too. When he came out there with that blue, I think it was a blue shirt, I said, you know what? Flair should be wearing a shirt all the time now, because he can still do all the things. He can still work pretty good. He still is great on the mic, but he just, and that's why, I think it was Thunder this week. You kept seeing at the beginning of that show, and it was right there. Flair is flabby sign.
Oh, it's so sad. It's so sad when I see that, and knowing that from bell to bell, in some ways he may be the best guy in the company, and he certainly when he's on, he is, as far as the ability to make someone else look good. I think he's still the best guy in the company.
You know what? You can fault him for whatever, and I agree with a lot. I think it's almost time, but I think the thing you got to admire is he goes out there and elevates everybody's game he steps in that ring with, and he busts his butt. And he's not afraid to sell. He'll put whoever over, and which is maybe his downfall.
Including Medusa.
Yeah, yes. And I mean, to me, it's disrespectful that Hogan won't sell for him more. I mean, it's a courtesy thing. But he goes out there and gives us all, and I appreciate that, rather than see some guy 10 years his junior go out there and walk through a match.
Like his tag team partner.
Yeah. Yes. Well, when they had that Hogan, Hennig, Flair, Luger tag match, as that thing unfolded, a thought hit me. Kenny J was the third best worker in that ring.
Mickey J, yeah.
And that was kind of frightening.
But Dave, do you agree that somebody should be advising some of these guys maybe to dress differently to maybe enhance their image and perception of them?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I think your points were real good when it comes to, Alex Wright, when he came out there without a tan, it really hurt him. And, and it was too bad because he had such a good build-up. Abbott, the thing with Abbott, okay, is that the beer gut actually got him over in UFC. I don't know that it helps him in pro wrestling. And he, the way, but it was a weird charisma he had in UFC.
Right.
And that people...
Yeah, it was the contrarian. He was the contrarian opponent there because he wasn't the one who worked out.
He was against the grain.
Right, and it was like everyone's, everyone wanted UFC to be their fantasy of a bunch of bar fights. But when the standard of fighting got good, the real athletes, took over. But Abbott was the one bar fighter who could, they marketed him and put him in matches. Where against certain opponents and he was tough, and he's a tough guy. But
until this guy learns to work an interview, or at least do some body language and facial expressions, he can still go ahead and knock these people out in 1 minute. But until he learns those ingredients, I don't see him drawing with anybody, honestly.
I think he's dead personally.
Yeah.
I would have tried something with Abbott, but now I think he's dead in there, just like spitting in the wind, trying to get him over, because whatever it is that he brought to the table is gone, because all he brought to the table was the fact that he was a real dangerous guy who's real, and now everyone knows he's not real, and it's like and the other thing is it's like Vince McMahon came in and got to knock out Hunter and Shane, right?
Right.
Tank's doing it with Doug Dillinger, and that's why the whole
whole thing with that lumberjack deal, he does it, for no apparent reason. It leads to nothing, and then the interview was so horrible, bland, generic, that you couldn't derive anything from that either.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't know how to do a pro wrestling interview, which is funny because he was not a bad interview on UFC.
Don't you think maybe now he's trying? Before he's playing at it, right? I mean, a lot of times when I say that, I think a lot of times, great personalities in the locker room don't come across on out in front of the camera simply because they try to be somebody else. I think Alfred Hayes, to me, was always funny or twice as funny in the dressing room when he was wrestling than he ever was on, when he was doing Second Banana.
I always thought, like Ken Shamrock, because I know him a little bit and I've seen him in UFC, Ken Shamrock that you talked to and Ken Shamrock that was in UFC was 10 times the interview of Ken Shamrock in the WWF, because Ken Shamrock in the WWF was trying to be what someone envisioned Ken Shamrock should be, rather than be Ken Shamrock what he is, where he was comfortable at.
Exactly.
He was trying to be an actor,
yes. And,
acting wasn't his forte.
No. Well, Brad Armstrong has such a great dry wit. I mean, I've made trips. The guy keeps you in stitches on the road all night. But he doesn't come across that way on camera because he tries not to be himself.
Yeah. Oh, the buzzkill thing was a bad one.
Bless his heart. That's a shame. I mean, because he's one of the technically most sound performers in this business this moment.
Oh, yeah. But, I think the whole thing, I don't know, Les, like, you're around this because you're around a lot of young guys that want to be wrestlers, and some of them, I'm sure, come in with the idea of, hey, I'll fall on thumbtacks, put me in the ring. I mean, it's like, what I'm trying to think, how do you save them from themselves?
Well, the only thing I tell is while they're in my camp or while they're working in our little promotion is that, you play by our rules. And what I'm going to teach you is a foundation. The important thing to me, if you come out of my camp, is that you have a foundation that whatever you do from that point on, that you have an opportunity or at least a potential opportunity to be tried out in either WCW, WWF, or ECW. And again, that's what I was saying, alluding to earlier, when we're talking about the extreme thing. Because a lot of these kids don't even want to try it. You notice so many of these guys are wearing the big hockey jersey and stuff, just we're talking about fat guts a little early, right? And, I mean, it's a shame, to me, the challenge is to see how high you can rise in this business, if that's what, if you're in the business at all. And to achieve that, you've got to put the whole package together. And some guys just think, well, this is the way, the shortcut. And, of course, it's not.
Listen, alluding to what Tony said, what would you think if there is going to be regulation on this business? I mean, is there like a line, you've been around for a long time, and you know what guys can do with and without killing themselves on a nightly basis. Is there like a line? I don't know. What's the line? What's over the line? What's under the line?
Well, of course, a lot of that has to do with the skill level of the person pulling the deal. Yeah,
you're right about that. Yeah, obviously, all this really.
Yeah, exactly. And, as good as Mick Foley was at it, he's 34 years old and virtually crippled, right? But bless his heart, I mean, he entertained me, but I didn't want him to pay that price. I'm adverse to the broken glass, and the fluorescent tubes, and, a little juice I'm not adverse. If the chairs are used in moderation. But the sad thing there is, you can bang some guy on the chair, with a chair, on his head all night, and he may feel like nothing bad happened to me. But, over the long haul, it's got to do some damage. But that's, I think, again, it comes back to, at some degree, well, I think all you journalists wrote about the deal with New Jack at the last pay-per-view. No regulation, no thought, no planning it out. And somebody could have died in that thing. Now, but when is some kid going to try that, for God's sake? And I'm surprised. I told Mick, right after the Hell in the Cell thing, the first one, I said, the sad thing is at some point down the road here, the next couple of years, you're going to hear some independent kid nobody's ever heard of doing it for $10 and just trying to, he thinks, make a name for himself, end up either paralyzed or dead.
Guaranteed. Yes. I'm expecting that one to happen, like weekly almost. I almost expect it now.
Sure.
Let's go to Matt in San Francisco. Matt, you're next up with Les Thatcher.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
All right, Matt. How about you?
All right. I got a question for you, Les.
Okay.
Okay. I think it was last year, towards the end of last year on Nitro, it was Page and Flair, and I heard after the match that there was some debate going on in the back about the way the match was called, where Page wanted to work all the spots in the back, and Flair wanted to do it in the ring. Okay, my question is, how do you train your boys?
To work it in the ring.
Work it in the ring.
Yes. Good. I don't, and the reason I say that, yes, and I know Dallas, but I've never sat down and gone over a match with him, but I understand he does a printout on his matches. I've seen sheets written out. A guy brought me a copy one from an indie show, which laid out an entire match. The problem with that is Matt, if you and I might burn the Cow Palace down tonight with a specific match, we might take that same match to Salt Lake City tomorrow night, and these people might sit on their hands. So we've got to be able to make adjustments on the fly. We can't call timeout, go back to the back, and work out another match. I was always taught you may put a few opening spots together, two guys that work together for a long time. A lot of times you don't talk over anything but the finish. You may lay out the last couple minutes of the match, and when a guy says, let's build it in the ring, I'm impressed. I think, and it's great to go along for the ride sometimes. if I've worked with guys who have enjoyed working with, and you'll trade off throughout the match. You know, I'll call my offense, he'll call his offense, or vice versa. And I think the match flows better that way because you can feel the crowd and what they're going with, and if they're not going, you can make the adjustments and go in another direction.
Yeah, it's good to see that you're bringing back more of the old school style. Next question. I'd like to rattle off some names, and I'd like to get your feelings on.
Okay.
Jimmy Cornette.
Jimmy Cornette. He's a good friend of mine. Sort of a volatile personality, but he's a good guy. Jimmy has got a very fertile mind for this business, and Jimmy says what's on his mind, and I respect him for that. And of course, that's one of the reasons that we've both cost us both millions of dollars in the business for opening our mouths at the wrong time. No, seriously, Jimmy's a good man for the business. He respects it, and it's a shame, he's one of the great managers of all time that he's on the shelf and not working on Monday nights. But it just unless you got a 38D cup now, it doesn't work.
Jim Kentner.
What I was going to ask you, Les, what do you think as far as like the future of managers?
I think they'll evolve back, and they'll get some managers back in there. At some point, one of these little frail girls is going to actually get hurt, and then they're going to have to sit and think and say, well, maybe if we're going to do some of these really goofy bumps, we better bring some guys back just who are built a little stronger. I cross my fingers every time Mae Young goes to the ring.
Oh, yeah.
I'm seriously afraid that something bad is going to happen to that lady.
Let's see. He asked you about Jim Kettner. Let's talk about that.
What?
Do you know Jim Kettner?
I don't know him. I've talked to him on the phone. We've never met.
Okay.
What? Did something happen or?
No. He was just asking what your thought of him was.
Oh, Jim Kettner. It seems like a good promoter. The Super 8 tournament he does is, from all indications, two of my kids are up there this year, and I say two of mine. Chad Collier works with us and trains at our place, and of course Dean Malenko started. He and Shark Boy were up there, and they were super impressed the way the production was put together. And Jim's been doing it a long time, so I'd say he's obviously successful, maybe one of the most successful indie promoters in North America.
Okay. How about Michael Modest?
I've heard about Michael Modest, but I don't know him. But the funny thing is, the kid here in Cincinnati who went to school out there, he was at Berkeley and trained with Modest, and he came over to my place, having some financial problems, and he'll probably come back and train later, but he worked out with us a couple times, and I was impressed the way he had been taught, because it was basically old school, and then I found out that Modest himself, you guys probably know, how old is he?
Mike Modest?
Yeah.
I'm guessing Mike Modest is about 27.
Yeah, but I guess he's been doing it since he was, 17, 18 years old?
Not that long.
Maybe about 20.
Yeah.
But he was trained real well by a guy named Ricky Thompson, who wrestled. He was trained by Rick Thompson, and their schools are very fundamentally. The guys that come out of the school here in Hayward are usually pretty fundamentally sound.
Right.
And he's the head trainer.
Well then, because I told this kid, I said, well, I'm impressed. You've been taught properly, and believe me, that's one in a billion. Sometimes. There's guys.
Oh, the schools, guys, yeah.
All righty. Roland Alexander.
Who?
Roland Alexander.
Roland Alexander.
Yeah, the guy who.
He's actually the promoter of All Pro Wrestling. Do you know him?
No, I don't know him.
Okay.
All righty. I got one more comment or question for you, Dave. What do you think of shooter Tony Jones working in Battle Art?
I hope he does real well.
He should do it.
It'll be good. It'll be good experience for him.
April 15th, man.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I just saw Tony Jones a couple weeks ago, and he mentioned that he was going there. It's good. It's real good for him to get out and work with new people, especially in Japan. I think it's gonna be real. I think it's the greatest thing for his career that's ever happened. Is just to go over there and work, and plus his style will fit well with what they do. So that's good.
He is a natural. That is down. I've seen him wrestle pro and collegiate.
Did he really beat Steve Neal?
Yes.
Really? Because he told me that, and I was like, he told me that he'd beaten Steve Neal, and I actually have known him for a couple of years, and he just told it to me for the first time in February, and I was just like, what? Really? I knew he was a very good amateur at San Francisco State, but Steve Neal might win the gold medal this year.
One more. Les,
Yes.
give me your pick for the Super J.
The what?
Super J Cup.
Wow. I've never had a chance to see an entire tape of that. I've just seen outtakes. But it's obviously, it's a great tournament. I mean, there's a lot of top talent that's come out of that, or I've been invited to it. I think it's one of the most prestigious, especially for junior heavies or cruiserweights, whatever you want to call it, in the world.
One more name for you, Les. Chris Daniels.
Chris Daniels.
Do you know Chris Daniels? Chris Daniels is real good.
He was in the Super 8.
Yeah, he won it.
Yeah, right. Okay. Chad and Shark both told me they were impressed with him. Again, I've never had a chance to see him work, but I guess this was his third year, and they said that he was the crowd favorite, and they were both thought he was a good worker.
Oh, he was the best on the indie team.
Yeah.
Now he's the best that WCW's got.
I hope WCW does something with. I really hope WCW does something with him. Because they got with him and Modest that are both coming in, or if Modest is. I mean, I know Modest is supposed to be on Nitro Monday, and if they give him a chance, I just hope that they don't just okay, we've got 2 more indie guys, let's beat them. Right. I hope that they give these guys. I mean, that's the one thing. I mean, even the other night, I saw. I don't know if you watched the show. I guess it would have been the Thunder on Wednesday, where Scotty Steiner wrestled Chuck Palumbo. And believe me, I'm not saying that Chuck Palumbo should have beat Scott Steiner. Far from that. But I just saw a guy who, he had good size. He seemed to have good athletic ability. He was not ready yet.
Right.
And I was just looking and go, you could do something with him. I hope they don't just establish him as a jobber to when he actually gets the rest of his game down, that he's been so typecast that no one will take him seriously as a star. I always fear that among the young guys, especially now with WCW, because they've done such a wonderful job of building up young guys in the last 5 years.
You know what they should do down there now, and I know Bischoff's seemingly, or from what I've heard, I don't know for a fact, that he dislikes tag team wrestling. But in all honesty, with the young guys needing the rub and needing to be built, the old formula of never mind that it's one of the top guys, but take a veteran mid-card guy teaming with one of the younger guys, and he can teach him a lot and cover the younger guy's mistakes until he learns.
It's an idea. In Mexico they do this every year, and they have done it in Japan in the past. Is to do a tournament, like a television tournament, where you have an established star teaming up with a guy who's not. So every team would have be like a Hulk Hogan with a lower guy, Ric Flair with a lower guy. And what will happen is the lower guy, just by being a tag team with Ric Flair or Hulk Hogan, as the tournament progresses, they're going to start being taken a little more seriously.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely. Well, I think when they bounced Vampiro up a couple of times in the tags or with the top echelon of guys, it would have been better if he'd got his hand raised.
I think that might happen Monday since he's working with Flair. So that'll be the one. It'll never be with Luger, right? Whenever he's with Luger, it's like, well, Luger's not going to elevate him, but maybe Flair will.
I don't know. You'd think that Luger, of all people, would respect the business and whatnot during the thing with Brody, in the 80s. You think that would have steered him straight. He would be, up to put anybody over. Whatever's good for business. And, you were talking earlier about Flair. I have to agree with you. That's great for business. And even in the WWF, The Rock is even doing it. A couple weeks ago with the Dudley Boys, he put them over.
Dudley Boys, he put the big boss man over on TV not that long ago.
That was one of the things that was drummed into my head, gentlemen, when I was taught this business was if you're any good at all, you can look at the lights and still come out of it strong.
Sure.
One thing that I don't understand, okay, and this is just a question of fairness, is that if anyone is, and then Luger, this is the thing with Luger, is that if guys continually put you over to make you a star, wouldn't you, just accept the fact that since they're doing that for you, you probably should do it for somebody else at some point?
Yeah, that would be your normal thought patterns, wouldn't it? Yeah, I feel. Well, I'll tell you the truth. Years ago, when you go into a territory and they would build you up, you'd start with the jobbers and then you'd work your way up in the opening match on the house show, et cetera, et cetera. A lot of times, the guys underneath who got beat. Of course, I'd been one of those guys too. that's the way we all started back then, unless you were, some humongous, outstanding athlete with a name already, or a big guy with a humongous amount of potential. But, I always felt it was part of the deal was to get some of their stuff in before you took over. Because, and again, I mean, I think today in WCW, there's a place for some squashes just to get some guys elevated that can't go the long haul yet, that are still trying to learn the business. But, everything wasn't always a squash. And in a house match, if you're working with a guy basically doing jobs, you're going maybe 8-10 minutes. So you get him some stuff in. He looks good, and you've beaten somebody. And I think that's the key, too. If it's, whether the people know it's entertainment or not, I think if you can make it seem competitive, you can draw them in, and I think that's what your job is today.
Okay, anything else, Matt?
Les, do you have TV?
Beg pardon?
The Heartland? Do you guys have
no,
TV?
we don't. Not at this time, Matt.
Are you pretty close to getting?
Gosh,
something going? Because I'd like to see some.
I don't. Right now we're not. But with these, the fantasy camp and the filming, and we're looking for a new and bigger location, which I think we have found this week. With everything else going on, right now I hope we don't get TV. No, down the road I'd like to do something like that. Yes, we do practice interviews in house.
Okay. Plug time for you. Where can I find tapes of the Heartland?
Where can you find what? I'm sorry.
Tapes of
videos.
Videos
of your show.
I'll tell you what. You put your email address at hwaonline.com, and we will put you on our newsletter, email newsletter mailing list, which comes out once a month. One of the guys in our organization is starting to edit some of the shows over the last couple of years and is going to do a highlight show or a best of sort of thing to kick the ball off. And, of course, that'll be announced there or on our website. So drop your email off there and we'll put you on the list.
Okay.
Or anybody out there, check us out and we'll be happy to put you on our email newsletter list.
All righty. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Wes.
All right. Thank you.
Take it easy, guys.
Okay, you're very welcome. That's, what's your, do you have any direct or indirect affiliation right now as far as WWF and WCW goes?
David, you've been crawling.
I mean, I know you're indirect, but,
Well, actually, yes, and I mean, I've signed one end of a contract.
Mm-hmm.
And as long as they sign it, yes, I do.
Which
WCW.
One? Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, 2-year deal. It just goes into effect next month.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah. I was
So-
tested because they hadn't broke it yet, but, yes, I signed it 2 days ago, and we've been talking about this. I've talked with both companies, and this, the deal with WWF was very generous, but the deal with WCW afforded a little more for the company for us to grow a little bit. And, honestly, Dave, I look forward to the challenge of, trying to not only send some of my kids out down there, but I'm going to be working with some of the power plant kids, basically, as Terry says, the graduate course. So that kind of, it's a good challenge for me, and I hope I can live up to it and, do a good job for them.
So the idea would be that they would, like, if they have guys, that they would send some guys up to you, and you'd put them in the ring as well up there.
Right. Yeah, we put them in shows. We've cranked up a little bit. In fact, starting in April, we're going to be running 6 shows every month, and then plus, I put the kids out in front of the crowd, but then part of my job is like taking the rough edges off back in the gym, like the little critiquing little things that the average person's not going to see, the body language, the way they stand, the way they throw a punch, or the way they carry themselves, to refine those things just to make it a better product.
What's funny is that that's actually the stuff that's the difference between like an indie guy and a major leaguer to me. Is it's like I sometimes you can't even put into words, but you can see it, and it's like the way you stand and the way you go into your lockup. I mean, it's like you know how to do it, or you're a guy who's mechanically trying to do it.
Right.
It's like real little things, but yet, and I think you can see it just in like the execution of the spot.
Absolutely, they should a good worker is crisp. The spots are tight. Now like this thing with 3 Count and the other guys, Hayashi and the other 2 kids. I think I should be an elephant and some peanuts in a calliope someplace. There's no psychology to it.
They're just like the only thing I can say for them is that at least they're really working their ass off to entertain.
Oh, I agree with that.
But I know what you're saying too, is that they're out there, trying to do like a spectacular move after spectacular move.
Right. With no direction for it, no rhyme or reason.
Yeah.
And that's, and I think that's a lot of the kids again, this, I mentioned this about the hardcore kids, but the kids that are willing to do technical stuff, willing to take the time to learn it, I think they try to find shortcuts too, and they see the spots. But again, the talent scouts in all the companies are looking for people that are technically sound, first, last, and foremost. And I think a lot of, it's amazing to me, a lot of kids don't want to hear that. Because it does, we were talking about the hardcore thing. I think this blends in as well. Two guys can go out there without the weapon. I mean, you can get rough, you can get blood if that's the case. There's no reason not to have a fence match or a strap match or whatever occasionally. But the point is, I think you can pull the people in and do your job if indeed you look right, the package is right, you're technically sound, your body language, facial expressions, your mechanics. But, of course, to develop to that degree takes time and commitment, and so many of these kids don't have it.
I think there's another point, too, as where it hurts WCW, and at times it's also even hurt WWF, and some, I think that there also has to be a context of what your product is. When you're trying to do a million things with your product,
right?
Sometimes I think that, like, when you try to get serious in a product with too much clowning, then you almost look like you're out of place.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, I absolutely do. Yes, I think, people perceive us as a show, obviously, and some people think we're funny to begin with. So the last thing we need to do is over-accentuate that. We need to try to, again, like the magician, pull off the illusion that we're actually mad at each other, we're actually competing, we're actually hurt. And I still think if it's theater, that's even more important than if it were real. So, because, let's face it, UFC is not the most entertaining at times of, combat sports.
SmackDown did a 4.8 rating, which is the exact same rating it did last week, so that's cool. This is from JP in San Francisco. For Les, I was at a show in Peel's Palace in Erlanger, Kentucky a few years ago near the end of Smoky Mountain Wrestling. New Jack and D'Lo were the only guys from Smoky Mountain that were there. After the card was over, there was a brawl in the parking lot between New Jack and some of the indie guys. It seemed legit. I remember that. That was legit. Since some of the punches thrown were 5 feet away and looked like they connected. I was wondering if you could provide any information on this incident, since I've been curious about it for years.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, some of the kids that trained with me were there that night. It talked into actually working that show, and they weren't ready. It was just some guy, trying to get his foot in the door. But yeah, Jimmy, what had happened there is the people that own deals wanted to change the structure of the deal that Smokey had with them. So Jimmy didn't wilt under the pressure, so pulled out the show a week out. And as it were, we were down, Al Snow and I were down doing TV. And actually we're on the way back when all this was transpiring. We were driving up the road and didn't have any idea. But yes, that was true. D'Lo and New Jack went over there, and I think New Jack had been partying down a little bit and started to get involved. It was actually just to work initially. And then one thing led to another, and the kid that was one of the security guys was an aspiring young gentleman that wanted to be a wrestler too. So I think maybe that, he got a little overzealous. Anyway, yes, it did spill out the parking lot, and the police were called, and yeah, it was legit.
This is real quick. People actually ask about this one. How's Rory Fox doing?
Doing real well. Putting on a little size now, and his work's improving, and he's got a fan club, and the little paperboy gimmick that he doesn't like is getting him over. Everybody seems to really get off on it. So I think Roy will be all right. I think he puts on a little size and gets a little more material, make a good cruiser for somebody.
This is actually about the Extreme Wrestling bill. They go, do you think that low-budget, gory promotions can get away with doing the exact same stuff but just simply build themselves a sports entertainment? What's weird about the semantics? Because I've always thought, when UFC was having all of its problems, I've actually told it to some people here who wanted to promote UFC, in fact, including Frank Shamrock, and I go, why don't you just call it pro wrestling? You won't get any hassles from any athletic commission, and then just present your product. And it's like, but people will do this. And I go, well, why not, after you do all this, and everyone says this, why don't you just have all the guys go to the commission and go, our match was fake? I don't know.
Well, you're right. I don't know either.
I don't know. It's like, I just see pro wrestling can do anything it wants, and so you just do it. I don't know. This is another question for you about someone who I'm sure you fondly remember, because you probably wrestled him a million times. Rip Hawk. He goes, what ever happened to Rip Hawk?
I think Rip is retired retired and down in, I think New Mexico. Lives in New Mexico. I'm not sure what he's doing. I know he was at a reunion of a lot of the Mid-Atlantic guys in Charleston, and Harry Marcus's birthday party or anniversary party. Mike Mooneyham can probably tell you where to find Rip exactly, but I remember Rip was up for that. A guy I have wrestled probably 100 times, maybe 200, 300. Yeah, he was a real good heel. He was one of the people that helped Bill Flair's foundation when he came into Charlotte.
Well, that was actually the example of what you were talking about. Ric Flair was a hot-shot young wrestler, and Rip Hawk was an established veteran, and the first big programs that Ric Flair had was Ric Flair and Rip Hawk tag team.
Exactly.
And the guy says that he remembers Rip Hawk as being brilliant at working a crowd.
Yes, he certainly was. Got a good head on his shoulders.
Okay, let's go to West in Virginia. Wes, you're up with Les.
Hi, guys. How's it going tonight?
All right. How about yourself?
Pretty good. Les, I saw the feature on MSNBC a couple weeks back, and it focused on two trainees that you had, and they made a big deal about the way they eat, to put on size and all, and I see somebody like Shark Boy who's got a lot of talent, but his physique's kind of out of place in WCW. How important is that when you bring in training?
I think it's really important, and that's something Shark and I have talked about, and he has finally gotten settled in back here, and this week started training with another one of my kids, Ray Steele. A good friend of mine named Mike has a gym up in Middletown, Ohio, Power Station Gym, and it's a tremendous facility, and he works with some of my kids, they go up there to train, and they've got Shark Boy, and that's the big thing I told him. I think size is his main flaw, and, another good solid 20 pounds of muscle, not that that's going to lock him in for life, but, it just gives him a better shooting chance of getting back, getting a contract with somebody. And I think, bless his heart, Jimmy Hart likes the gimmick and is giving him a little shove, and I think Dean can, live up to the expectations. It's just, I think it's the illusion. This business is an illusion, and I think people are accustomed to seeing racy, tight physiques, and, that's what they want.
Okay, anything else, Wes?
Yeah, I just want to get Les's opinion on the power plant at WCW. They turn out a lot of guys with good physiques, but none of them really have any talent. And with the amount of money that that company has, they should be doing a better job developing new people. I was wondering what his thought.
Well, I think that's one of the things where we come in. They were turning out some good athletes, but they didn't have any place to practice their trade, and see if it actually worked in front of fans. You can learn all the basic moves in the gym and run through all the drills, but to practice the psychology and actually be able to put something together, you got to do it in front of a crowd. So Terry Taylor is working his butt off down there trying to build a scouting system and, put together a developmental program, which they actually didn't have up until this whole thing sprouted. They just had the power plant, but a lot of those kids were trained in there, but except for getting squashed on one of the TV shows, actually didn't go out and work maybe for 2 or 3 months at a time. So without practical application, great instruction and being a great athlete, it really, it's a good foundation, but it doesn't get you there.
Thanks a lot for the comments, Les.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Wes. Let's go to Sean in Las Vegas, and let's try to run through these as quick as we can. Okay, Sean?
Yeah, I know you guys want to get through this quick, so I'm going to say, Les, I'm 18 years old, and I live out in Vegas, and as soon as this semester gets over with college, I'm going to be moving out to Cincinnati, and
Could I ask you to speak up? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
Yeah, sorry, I was just saying that I live out in Vegas. I'm 18. As soon as the semester of college is over, I'm going to be moving out to Cincinnati and starting in your camp. I have a question about the wrestling business. It goes along with the last caller's comment. Do you think that the wrestling business has enough confidence in it that bigger guys can actually sell to the smaller guys without hurting the larger guys' credibility?
I think it's easier today than it was 20 years ago. David had mentioned earlier, that I promote still some old style. I'm always under the impression, if there's 100 pounds difference, that it's not a contest. And I think it comes back to the ability of the wrestlers. Has a lot that plays a big part in it. But I think if you're trying to create the illusion, to me, I never saw the value in Mysterio and Nash or Mysterio and Sid.
No.
I mean,
Bigelow, yeah.
I never thought it did anything to elevate anybody. But I can see the David and Goliath thing working occasionally. I was never a big guy at 5'9" and 220. you know, where you're just salty and you keep fighting back, and no matter how much they beat you down, and it works once in a while, but you can't do it all the time. I think with Kidman, you know, and I love Billy's work, and I've watched him grow. Here's a kid who, if he's going to work with the bigger guys, it takes away from his style, which I don't like, but B, he needs to put on a little meat too, because I think, you know, you can't put him and Scott Steiner together and make me believe it. I'm sorry.
My example would be Chris Candido. He comes in, and they immediately throw him in the cruiserweight division, which isn't necessarily bad, but the fact is, will he ever get out of it, which I think he can perform in the heavyweight division. I don't know if he will ever get out of it.
Well, you know, Chris, I think this is the first thing I saw, and after his debut Monday night, if I were the booker, it's Kidman and Candido, Tammy and Torrey.
Yep.
And besides that, Chris can work Billy's style, and, you know, probably two of the best workers in that company right this minute.
Right. Okay, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, Sean, let's go to Ryan in Phoenix.
Hey, Dave, how you guys doing today?
Good. How about yourself, Ryan?
Pretty good. Something that I've been watching, and it gets worse and worse with WCW, their security. It's like if somebody does a run-in, their security's there before even someone else could even come out of the locker room, you know.
That whole security thing, well, the way they do it, they have a farcical look to it.
Yeah, it's horrible. And you don't see that in the WWF. I mean, you never have, really. It's like they don't want other people to do any run-ins, but yet they're doing the run-ins, and then the security's coming anyway. And it just makes it look worse.
See, there you go. You're looking for logic. How dare you?
Another thing I noticed was like Tank Abbott starting off the show the other night. I mean, that's horrible. You guys were talking about him earlier, and I get that. But, you know, and then I turned on SmackDown last night, and, you know, same time, same thing, Monday and Thursday, you're going to see it. The biggest people start the show and end the show. Yet, I mean, they don't get that. I mean, and it seems like it was even like that when Bischoff was there towards the end of his tenure.
I think there's several formulas in this business that don't need to be tampered with. You can change, you know, because it's 2000 versus 1950 or 1975, you can change the dressing, the shape of it. But the foundation and, you know, of these things, I think, you know, are important. And I think, you know, that's what you're talking about there is, I was always taught, you put it, whether it's a house show or a TV show, you open with a bang and close with a bang.
Yeah, because
you know, if you're going to lay any eggs, lay them in the middle where you've kind of lulled the people into a false sense of security by that time.
Yeah, because you got to reel them in to keep them there.
Sure.
And if you don't reel them in, they'll turn, you know, if it's a TV show, you know, they're going to turn the channel.
Absolutely.
If it's a house show, they're going to stay regardless, but still you want them involved. And, you know, if that doesn't happen, that's when you start getting the boring chants, you know, 20 minutes into it. Because they just aren't fired up.
Well, you know, I think one thing, too, is the fans have educated us opposed to the vice versa, and I was always taught we educate them. And, you know, you may lose a little business, but if you really wanted to settle things down, it would happen. You would convert them, you know, to because they want to see wrestling. And I think, you know, WWF's put a little more actual technique, a little longer matches, and I applaud them for that because, again, that's what brought us to the dance.
Yeah, that's one thing I really miss. I mean, I miss those 1 hour wars that, you know, that Flair used to have in NWA in the tiny little studio in Atlanta. I mean,
I'd settle for 20 minutes.
I use a lot of those old tapes. We were doing it the other night over at the gym, and play them for my kids. Just, you know, I'll tell them we're not going to see any hurricanranas here or, you know, moonsaults, but what you're going to see is facial expressions and body language, timing. You know, not 50 punches, but one punch that means something because it's thrown properly and at the right time.
Yeah, I mean, if you have two workers working that are fantastic, I mean, the old matches with Flair, the old even Four Horsemen in the little studio in Atlanta, they were phenomenal.
I think in Kansas City, Benoit and Hart proved that if you make it, you know, I mean, you take two good workers as the first ingredient, but then if the cast and crew of the rest of the show makes it meaningful.
That's the key.
Yes, it works.
Yeah, and that was the, you know, great best match probably of the year that I can think of for pure, you know, match style was the match with Benoit and Hart in Kansas City. I thought it was fantastic.
Oh, it was. You give me Flair and Terry Funk 20 years ago, and they don't have to throw a punch and they'll burn the house down.
Well, hey, I see you're up against the wall, so I will let you go, and have a great weekend, guys. Take care.
Okay, Ryan, thanks very much. Can we get Steve in Montreal in before we break? Okay, Steve, you're up in Montreal. We've got like a minute to go, so just ask quick questions.
Oh, gee, well, I was going to ask you about, I was going to ask Les about his opinion about Brian Pillman and whether his character would still, work today.
Oh, God, that's the character to be perfect today.
Oh, yeah, he was yes.
He was ahead of his time.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. It's just so unfortunate that his passing was like right before they went to that direction.
Well, he was kind of opening the door there, right? Remember, he took Terry Reynolds hostage, and
he was the one.
Exactly.
He changed the business.
Pulled the gun on Steve Austin.
Definitely. By the way, Jim Ross in his Ross report mentioned that he was going to try and get there for the memorial show. He said he mentioned it, and he said he was going to try and get down there. So.
Yeah, well, in fact, I've been playing phone tag with him. We talked about it last year. He said he'd try and come in for the fantasy camp and the Pillman, and I hope he can make it for both. Jim would be welcome to. Yeah, I told him, in fact, come in and you can help me MC the daggone thing. So.
All right, well, then I know you're right at the wall there, so anyway, take care, guys. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks a bunch, Steve. And Les, I want to thank you very much for doing the show. And
David, it's always a pleasure. Enjoying kicking things around with you. I tell you what, now I'm going to say this in front of the whole world, so you can't back out. Your press pass and your credentials are set.
You know what I would like to do, and I'm sure we could arrange it, is to do the show from there.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we'll work on that one. But
we can.
You mean Al will work on it, right?
Actually, that's a great idea, and Dave, I'll talk with you about it next week, and we'll try and set something up. Les, how's that sound?
Very good.
Excellent.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we'll just do the show from there, and you'll have all the guys there. It'll work out great. I mean, and they want me to go do more location stuff anyway. So yeah, I'd love to do it.
Very good. Let's work on it then.
Okay, great. Okay, Les, and we'll be talking to you real soon, and good luck with that show, and keep us up to date, and we'll keep updating everyone about who's going to be there, matches when they're made, and everything like that, and try to do this show from your show.
All right, very good, David. You keep up the good work, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks a bunch, Les.
Take care.
All right, that was Les Thatcher, and we're pretty much out of time. I just want to remind everyone, next week's guest, Monday, we've got Bret Hart, and he's very anxious to do the show, so that's going to be pretty interesting right there. We have got Wednesday, we're going to have Larry Matisic from St. Louis. Thursday is Jim Cornette, and Friday, Chris Cruz. We were supposed to have him on a couple of weeks ago, and he's written some interesting letters, and he's going to be on the Core TV special, and he's very strong opinions, and you guys can talk about that, and we'll be back on Monday, 6 p.m. with Brian.